Hello, hello, hello. How you doing, Matthew?
Doing well. Good evening, everyone.
I love that hat. The
Had this
first
hat
thing,
forever.
dude, it's like the first thing I think of is like Crocodile Dundee.
This is a hat my mom got me 25 years ago from Wyoming.
Wow. That's I love it, man. It looks so good. You wear it well.
Well,
I'm
and I guess I take after my dad because my dad had this hat that he got from Acapulco that he wore for I don't
ooh,
know 40 years before it blew off on the boat, hit in the water and shrank.
okay. Acapulco being really the one famous location that the Love Boat used to go to every episode.
we okay, so we watched Demolition Man the other night, and we're like, wow,
Oh,
how prescient is this? And they had they were setting up for their cyber meeting, and they were playing the Love Boat.
oh, dude. Well, and in that movie, obviously everything is theme songs and jingles,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
the world has come to? And honestly, the way music's going right now, I'd almost prefer to hear nothing but jingles and theme songs from old TV shows, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, some of those 1980s sitcoms had some great intros.
Oh man. I mean, you're talking about Grammy award winning
Yeah.
songwriters and singers
Yep.
singing some of these theme songs, and I think it's something that's like desperately missed
Oh yeah.
from TV today.
Do you know what the name of the song for the intro to MASH is called?
Oh, I played it in jazz band in middle school,
Yeah.
and at that time it was called The Theme from MASH.
Right. Yep. This song is, yeah, because they didn't want to put that in books that are going into school because the name of the song is "Suicide is Painless."
That's it. That's right. And how many times I've as a bartender, as how many times I've probably heard that trivia question come up on a trivia night or at the bar. And it's one of those things, like a lot of things in life that in my life that I will forget. And
Yeah.
the next time you'll probably have to remind me again. Um, Much like I lean on you sometimes during some of our discussions here, because you are, I mean, really, truly like a encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to pop culture, toys, comics, movies, TV. I mean, everything that encompasses it, really. And while I have my opinions, and there's a lot of things that I do pay attention to and things I find interesting, I mean, you remind me of the way I am with music.
Hmm.
Now, barring our little hiccup with MASH and the theme from MASH, um, sports and music. Music, I'm one of those really weird people that remembers when albums were recorded and the names of albums and B-sides and stuff like that. People who played on records,
Mhm.
where a tour took place or something crazy happened. And I can also do that with sports going back, well into the 70s, even before I was really old enough to understand. I watched a lot of stuff, NFL films and all that stuff. So I just soaked all that in. You, however, with the topics that we like to talk about, is somebody who really knows a lot, and that's why I love having you to talk for a couple hours every week. And we'll get into some stuff. I kind of want to jump in, at least say hi to the chat. I know we're uh, going on and adding a few people here and there. Sometimes you get some lurkers that, like I like to do. You might be busy. You might be washing dishes, washing your hair, watching YouTube in the shower, and you can't comment like I watch with the open bar stream every Thursday. Happens right when I'm getting ready for work, and so I have to sit there and watch without commenting. Of
I
course,
am
when you have
so
go
glad
ahead,
that
go ahead.
I'm so glad that they've kept that show going, and it was like an every other week thing, and then all of a
Oh
sudden it became an
yeah,
every week thing, and people are loving it, and just having those guys bring guests on and just talk about the topic of the day, whatever. That's a great show.
so and that's something that I often kind of fail to do when we're talking, because I know we like to try to keep things on a kind of a tight little 2 hour schedule, and that's because not only of your schedule, but I know that there's so many live streams. There's so many people who are watching stuff, just finished watching stuff, that are about to watch stuff, that are watching stuff right now, bouncing back and forth. And but man, there are some great streams out there that I actually want to at least mention. But before I do that, I at least want to mention a couple people in the chat that are getting going here and hanging out with us for a while. A Punk with Toys, man, I appreciate you jumping in. It says hit that like button. Yes, anybody that's watching live or joining on the replay, hit the like button. It always helps with engagement. No matter what. And regardless of engagement, if you like what you hear, you like what we do, like the way we talk, whatever it is, if we tickle your fancy, like my fancy likes to get tickled on occasion, then hit the like button and subscribe if you can, if you're not already. We have the lovely and talented Shark Eyes here, gentlemen and gentleman, to you, mate. Let's see, War Chest is in the house too, man. Yeah, and guess who is in the effing chat? That's you, buddy. Yeah, I had a great conversation with that dude last Friday night.
Nice.
And my Friday night streams, I kind of want to keep as a solo thing, only because of the tempo of it.
Yeah.
Only because sometimes you just kind of want to meander, you want to talk about what you want to talk about, and you just kind of want to go from thing to thing. Maybe you might take 20 minutes on something. Maybe you might take 5. Yeah. But I had nothing going on, and I thought, man, let me bring this dude in for a little bit. And you saw he's a character and a real fun dude to talk to. I've had a lot of correspondence with him, and I look forward to possibly doing something with him in the future. Some weeks I have 2 streams, some weeks I have 3. I know you know what it's like too, bouncing around. But
I'm trying to convince. Well, I don't think I have to do much convincing. We just need to find a time to do it. But Axion Figs and I want to do it. Tremors, and I will get Punk to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh my gosh!
I will get Punk to watch that. We will talk about that movie.
I told the story. I believe, I think it was on Friday. We talked about, but I remember my dad taking me to see Raiders in the theater. And at that age, I mean, Harrison Ford being Han Solo, right? And at the same time, practically, was just so iconic, right? And so many scenes from that movie, and you recreate them when you come home. You pretend you have a whip. I mean, people still do it now, and that comes directly from that. I can't think. Yes, there's some westerns, but for most people that are about our age and even younger, they know it from those movies.
Yep.
In particular.
I remember going to see Temple of Doom with my dad, and the Kalima scene.
Oh my gosh, dude. And unfortunately, as I've talked with Down South 77, aka 3-Star Draw, that we won't get that figure, I don't believe. Obviously, that figure line was not, continued, I don't believe.
Yeah, no, that figure line's dead.
Yeah, and I liked him. The only one I got was the beginning of Temple of Doom, where he's in the white suit and Club Obi-Wan.
Oh,
right?
So you know what I did with my Club Obi-Wan, Indy?
What? Lay it on me.
I popped his head off and I put on the Mezco Logan with the eye patch, so I could have my Wolverine from Madripoor patch.
Okay.
And that they didn't have that figure out yet. I mean, that figure just came out a little while ago, but that's what I did with mine. But I got all of the first wave, I think.
Okay.
And then I got Short Round and I don't know if I got any of the indies from there, but I got the Short Round because he had the extra hat, and I kept threatening Punk and other people that I needed a whole bunch of Short Rounds so I could do a photo diorama of a sweatshop building all the Hasbro toys.
Oh wow, how fantastic. Unbelievable. Or LeBron James's shoes.
Yes.
And did the Short Round come with a little thing on his chest that had a boxing glove come out of it?
No data accoutrement.
Damn.
But his hat came off. He had a cloth vest. I mean, he actually came with a lot of accessories, and one of them was Indy's hat. So you can take that hat and put it on any figure you want.
Oh yeah, man. I actually like that figure line. I want to say hey to Frostbite's G.I. Joe Repro. What's up? Good day, mate. maybe I will be able to get that going instead of down south. Maybe I can get the mate thing at my bar. I'll see what I can do. It might be kind of fun. And maybe I could take a video and just go down the line and have everybody sit, and I'll send it to Shark and Frostbite. And hell, right now we have just as many Aussies as we have Americans, right? Almost.
Well, I'll tell you, those Aussies, they are pretty darn loyal, because I show up in a couple Frostbite streams, and man, he's everywhere.
Yeah, he is.
I appreciate him and Shark Eyes coming in and hanging out, and I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get ready for work and everything, and usually he's got a stream. Unfortunately, by the time I get around to chatting on it, they're about done. But
yeah,
I do listen.
and that's how it is. And a lot of the streams that I watched, I was going to mention a lot of those streams that I watch from a lot of the pop culture critics and YouTubers. There's so many of them. However, that sphere of people have been able to somewhat kind of do their streams to where they're not really overlapping so much. A couple of them do here and there, but for the most part, they're all, kind of in their own time frame, and they're easier to keep up with, and of course, obviously, you might be at work, this, that, whatever,
Yep.
like, today, for instance, with the Real BBC.
Yeah.
But they've done a pretty good job, if you're into those folks, and that's kind of your Nerdrotic, your As Heels versus Babyface, your Critical Drinker, your Mauler, Geeks and Gamers, who would do a big stream tonight. They're going right now. That's a big one.
And then Disparu is joining the FNT crew as their LGBTQIA plus representation.
Yeah, which actually should be the little platoon rather as well.
It should be, right?
Because, right? You would think.
I mean, right?
Because he is. I mean,
right, yeah.
So real quick,
and I thought that it was funny as all get out that when he was on the stream, they dinged the channel or demonetized the channel for something that he said, and what he said was very self-referential, and I mean, it was funny. So
and probably fit within the month of June, I would guess.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, real quick, Shark Guy says some people focus too heavily on that franchise in a way which isn't healthy. I'm assuming Raiders. When you're nitpicking about a difference between the satchel bags in the films, you're doing too much.
I know who you're talking about there.
Okay. Do. Well, give me a little backstory if you can. If you don't want to, that's fine. I don't want to call anybody out or make any big deal. That.
The guy hates me anyway because he can't take a joke.
Okay.
But he is extremely detailed on Indiana Jones, and he knows his stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay. He's absolutely right about all of it, but he goes into the deep dive details. And his biggest complaint about action figures or drawings or movie things or whatever are how accurate it was to this or that or this.
Okay.
And knowing that there's a difference between the shirt he wore in one scene versus the shirt he wore in another scene versus the hat he wore in the first movie versus the hat he wore in the second or third movie, because the hat was made for that first movie, and they made him for that movie, and then that hat maker never made that hat again. It was always somebody else, and so it didn't ever quite fit the same, and it wasn't exactly correct from the original hat that was actually sold in the stores because it was taller or whatever. There's all these minutia differences, which, I mean, are important to a lot of people, but man, he goes nuts on that stuff.
Well, and while I do understand certain things, let's say from a lore perspective when it comes to movies and television, we got to think sometimes about the prop makers and the clothing designers on sets. You got to think about how long it takes to film something, right? From pre-production to filming and all these different things. And I think it would be ridiculous to think that there was a way to be able to save every piece of everything. Do some people focus on those things? Yes, possibly when you shoot all three movies back to back to back, or two movies back to back. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and this is something that actually came up recently discussing a show that I don't really want to talk about, but some things are done for the purpose of just looking cool.
Yep.
right, and looking good on camera. And while yes, the show they were talking about is not a show that I really care about, the person who talked about it was the person who actually directed the lightsaber fights from the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And looking at that artistry and looking at what we've been given the last few years, um, he was at least being somewhat devil's advocate and saying, hey, look, some of this stuff, yeah, it's goofy. It doesn't make sense. But when you're on a set, there are long days, there are long shoots, there's all
Yep.
kinds of stuff, there's reshoots, multiple takes, and you're just trying to get what looks cool.
Yep.
And for people that just watch TV, when it's all said and done, yes, you want a great story. Of course you do. But you want stuff that actually looks good as well. And
Yep.
sometimes, conversely, at the same time, saying that some things look great for the camera, but sometimes people are trying to be a little too true to the form of fighting or whatever. And it doesn't really look interesting unless you shoot it a certain way or just say, hey, does this move look cool or
Yep.
not?
Yeah. And kind of going back to that, because I remember when the Phantom Menace came out and everybody was going nuts for that lightsaber battle. And I was, I'm always the contrarian, I guess. I don't know. I liked it and I appreciated it for its storytelling. And that's what matters in the sword fight. But when you break down that fight, there's a lot of useless motion. And
Right.
and it's there to tell the story. So the storytelling element trumps what it looks like or how accurate it is or whatever. But
yeah, and Shark Guy says, let's not forget that props can often be just as easily lost, repurposed, or go missing as they can be archived and used on different movies, used on different sets. They can be, repainted. They can be retextured. They can be, or just completely destroyed and remade. Imagine how many props of these massive Hollywood movies or television shows that we've watched over the decades that they're just gone. They're just gone.
Most of them are thrown in dumpsters.
Right. Historical sets, houses on a lot that were used, like the Waltons, which is in disrepair. It's basically, just falling down, whatever. But not that that's a show people really care about now, but you know what I mean. I mean, just reference wise. And there he is, the one and only 3-star draw. Holy shite, the Cowboy and the Beaver. I had to wear the beaver costume. I will say, as much as I've got the air on, as nice and cool as it is here compared to outside, I am starting to get a little warm. So if I start to shed my fur, okay, it's not for entertainment. It's for practical purposes, y'all. Lord, I mean, listen, join my, my OF. There's only one fan on it, though, so don't be scared. I'm trying to do that waist up stuff, trying to make that waist up stuff popular. But anyway, so real quick though, I just want to mention some of those shows that I watch. And because I think you and I talk about them, we talk about behind the scenes, we watch them. But shows such as Friday Night Tights, which has a huge crew, regularly gets between 12 and 20,000 viewers, give or take, depending on who their guest is. That is, Nerdrotic, who Gary Beekler, which has now achieved well over 1 million subs at this point on the Nerdrotic channel. As from Heels versus Babyface was a host up until this last episode was his final episode, but I encourage you to look up Heels versus Babyface. He is a fantastic British fellow. Some would say New Zealand. And then you have obviously Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, Ryan Kennel from RK Outpost, Jeremy obviously from Geeks and Gamers, and I mean, he's created this massive network now of channels and stuff. X-Ray Girl, who is their producer as well. You have Comics Division,
Odin when he pops in,
Quarter Black Garrett, who also does Blaze TV stuff. He does a YouTube show for Blaze called Normal World that they do about every night. Chrissy Mayer, who's a comedian. It's just a wonderful panel. And often they have someone who has done some really amazing deep dive 4 hour, 10-hour reviews of Star Wars films and otherwise. It's a guy named Mauler, Mauler. He is unbelievable.
The Cthulhu
Unbelievable.
Lord Mauler.
Yeah, man. Never seen his face, but it doesn't matter. And then, like I said, you have, like today, the Real BBC, which is Nerdrotic, as Heels versus Babyface, and Mauler. You have the Open Bar on Thursdays, which is usually at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. Eastern. And that is Critical Drinkers live stream, where he has on a multitude of guests. He and Mauler co-host that stream. You have Tuesday night's Main Event, which goes on actually tonight, which I believe starts at, maybe they start doing it a little earlier now, maybe 5 Eastern or 4 Eastern. They get started a little earlier nowadays. These are all streams that
have you
that
watched
and I
any
watch.
of Rip and the Silverback?
I've watched Eric July and as Heels versus Babyface do a Rip and the Silverback, which is Eric July is the creator of the Rippaverse, which has had some successful and unbelievable comic introductions, independent comics, well over millions and millions of dollars as an independent comic creator with a comic called ISOM. He has Alpha Core, which has Chuck Dixon as well, writing for him. And if you know anything about Chuck Dixon, some of you guys might know he did Snake Eyes. He wrote a lot of Batman. He's
Nightwing.
got
Some of his best stuff is Nightwing.
Nightwing.
Oh, he did write Batman.
He did write Batman. Absolutely. He actually, we're talking about legends. Gabe El-Taib.
Yeah, Chuck Dixon created Bane.
Yes, created Bane. So you're talking about comic legends working on an independent comic. And if you're into comics, check out ISOM, ISOM, Rippaverse, Rippaverse. Amazing stuff. Getting started. He has a new comic.
Every 3 months, he's got a new graphic novel coming out, written by somebody who is known in the industry, or himself, or he's bringing in some great talent. And Chuck actually has another book coming with him soon for a character that Chuck created and is bringing into the Rippaverse sometime soon. That sounds kind of fascinating, kind of a Batman Punisher type of character, but obviously it'll be a little bit different.
And not to just, blow it up too much, but like, Eric July, man, like this dude, yes, he was a musician. He's been on YouTube for like 13 years, 12, 13, 14 years, something like that, and built up a following, but has always wanted to create a comic and paid his own money to do it. And then set out to have it, pre-ordered or ordered, and then fulfilled those orders. And the first one hit over $3 million and just blew up. I did want to say, hey to Frank Dumanu, what's up? And Tony Stiggs. Yeah, man. What's up, buddy? What's up? Club Tarkin in the house, baby. Club T. Bitches. All right.
Do you know where the Silverback came from?
So I know the Silverback came from him getting criticized and being called a big gorilla, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
A bald-headed gorilla or big gorilla because of his as Heels versus Babyface. He has some really dramatic and great takes, and some of them have gone extremely viral, and has also taken on a lot of criticism for that.
And he had a number one song for a little while.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh my God. That's the what was it? The if I can find it, I'll try to pull it up. It might be hard because you got to kind of dig through that stuff. But actually another number one song was for Friday Night Tights, and that's the theme for Friday Night Tights
by the famous Dan Vasc.
Dan Vasc. And if you don't know who Dan Vasc is, Vasc, he is from Brazil, and he is an absolute amazing singer who did a cover of Amazing Grace. He also did a cover of Toss a Coin to Your Witcher,
which is more famous than the song from the actual show.
Yep, that's right. Unbelievable version, man. Dan Vasc is just an incredible talent. Wraith Mace is shown up tonight. What's going on, buddy? How you doing? So we're just kind of getting started. A little what's up chat. I just didn't want to just have to just blow through and right into everything. I just kind of wanted to sit here and talk a little bit and talk about some of my influences, some of the people that I enjoy watching and listening to and downloading their streams. And and I know, Matthew, obviously when I talk to you and you bring stuff up, it's like, oh yeah, that was from a stream today. That was from a stream last night. That was from 2 days ago watching Chris Gore and Film Threat. That
Right.
was, and Chris.
Man, I loved Chris Gore back in those
Oh,
guys, back in those
man.
G4 days. It
G4.
was awesome.
Yeah, DV Doomsday,
Yep.
and he was on Attack of the Show with Olivia Munn and Kevin
Munn.
Pereira.
Yeah.
And
Those were great shows. That was a great time.
those were
And-
great days, man. Early and mid 2000s.
It was the first peek into the explosion of Comic-Con, right? They started
And
doing
nerd
stuff.
culture also.
It really was, and they started doing that, and that got so much traction, and it built up, and it was such an interesting time. And then Twilight came and ruined Comic-Con.
And speaking of Twilight, I actually have an article that I want to discuss with you in a little bit. That's so funny that you mentioned that, and I did not prep you on that. As a matter of fact, I barely prepped you at all. And part of the fun is that is the fact that you do know so much. And Matthew told me a while back, really when we first started this, I started to send him kind of a show rundown. And Wraithmay says, Matt, love the hat, sir. Definitely Doc Holliday vibes. Yeah, baby. Also Crocodile Dundee. I know it's probably a completely different hat. I don't know my hats that well. I know a bowler, I know a newsboy or a newsie, and I know fedoras, but the rest of the bunch, a gambler. I know a gambler. That's a good hat too. That was from lead singer Leonard Skinner wore a gambler.
Leonard
back in the
Skinner,
70s, man. Yeah, Ronnie Van Zant. All right. So anyway, the reason why I really just don't have to send you a show rundown is because most of everything I'm going to bring up. And if you don't, you're still going to be able to comment on it in a way that makes sense, in a way that's good. So it's like, why send him a rundown? He keeps up with all the same stuff I do, and not one time has it come back to bite us. So we'll see if it does tonight. But anyway, so yes, those of you in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out, man. And again, hit that like button and sub if you haven't, but I think everybody here is, and I really appreciate it. In the meantime, I want to get on something real quick that's kind of come up here recently. And those of you who are in the chat, you will relate to this, right? So let me get some pictures up here. If I can find my damn pictures. All right. So started seeing, okay, first thing first. All right, before we get to the distribution things that I want to talk about, let's bring this up right here. No, not that. Jesus. What the hell is that? My son.
You playing Fortnite or something?
It's like my son. It's like my son pulled a fast one on me or something here. I'm like, what the hell was that?
And that's for stealing his beaver suit.
It's actually interesting. That's so funny. Well, I'll just share this and then I'll just click on them as they come up. That's so funny. What in the living hell is that? It's something from like Roblox, maybe.
Yeah, it looked kind of like that.
All right. What is going on? Aiden? I swear to God. I'm gonna kill you. Well, all right. Let me try this another way. Well, I tell you what, screw it. For some reason, it's not coming up. I don't know why. I had it all set.
That's all right.
We got an email from HasLab. We got an email from Pulse.
Everybody's seen it by now. Everybody's been crying in everybody else's Wheaties about it.
Yep. What do you think about it? Obviously, they've changed their timeline to they've changed their timeline from September to December for the Dragonfly.
Look, it sucks. Nobody wanted this to happen. But I do believe it is a logistics or a quality control issue, probably. I'm speculating that's probably what it is. People are all whinging about it right now, and I'm not going to be a Hasbro shill because I'll take them down when it's time to take them down.
Right.
But honestly, if you think about what's going on, it looks to be like there was an issue with something, and they had to go back to the factory and fix it. It looks like it's something fairly significant to delay it that long. But there was some kind of mistake or error, or I don't know what it was, but there is
There we go.
something that has happened, and people
What
are
the
just
hell?
whinging about
Go
it,
ahead.
and they're just going nuts over it, and people are wanting reparations for the delay, or how are they going to compensate us, or what are they going to do special for us, or whatever. It's like, what are you talking about? They don't have to do any of that. People are like, well, they're just doing it to earn more interest. I'm like, that's not how money works, people. I mean, I've seen every kind of weird ass comment that there is out there on the topic. And I'm like, look, you do realize that they took all that money and they put it into production. And what wasn't put in production, the side that was profit, they put back in their coffers to maybe
Yes.
earn interest, maybe pay their employees, maybe, pay somebody, the executives, to earn the money. I mean, that's what you do. You have to be in business to make a profit. And they took that money into production, and now they're probably having to dip back into some of that profit to with this error. So this error is actually costing them money because they wanted to get it to us, and for whatever reason they can't, and so now they're having to spend more money to rectify whatever the issue is.
Yes, and so I understand why people would be upset about it. I really do. However, personally, I've always fallen on the side of when it gets here, it gets here.
Yeah.
Now, I cannot necessarily say that I feel that way about everything.
Right.
And it depends on what it is, right? What does it mean to you?
Yeah.
Now, yes, a lot of money goes into that. Uh, pre-production, design, and then yes, you bring all that money in. But at that point, when they've brought that money in, Matthew, where do you think they're at in production when they fund a HasLab, when they say day one, 9 a.m., whatever it is, here we go, bing, bang, boom, let's bring the money in. Where do you think they're at in production, or have you ever talked to anybody or have any idea maybe about that?
From everything that they have released at the time of these things, it would appear that they are very much well into the design, if not complete 3D renders of what they want to accomplish. Sometimes they've made it to the prototype model building stage of it.
Right.
And I prefer it to be that far along so that they have something to show. Whether it's final product or not, it's something. It's what Bobby Valla did with his Locust in DFW, right? He brought the model with him. He said, I'm not going to show you 3D renders. I'm going to show you the model. And everybody's like, this is awesome, except for Lawrence, who hates it, but that's whatever. And it looks cool, and you get to see it in that, and then you get to see the 3D renders, and the 3D renders are the 3D renders. They don't ever look as good. And so I think they have to be at least that far along in the process to go to a HasLab.
I would think so, right? That it's a done deal. They're definitely ready to push the button, but you've got to have an order number, right? Like you need an order number, and really you've got several weeks to fund it. So when it's all said and done, you really need to know how many you need to make, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're going to have some. Maybe you have some refunds. Maybe you have some you need to send back. Whatever. But
there's always a percentage more that you make
yes,
for one of three reasons, right? So you have QC issues, you have customer service issues, right? Somebody breaks it, but you're still going to be the nice guy and replace the part, right? Or it gets lost in shipping, and so the company's like, okay, well, that's not the customer's fault. We need to make sure the customer gets either a refund or their product, so you have extra for that. So there's always a percentage. I don't know what that percentage is, but they always produce more than that. And sometimes they produce enough more than that so they can sell them later back on the website. They try not to do that with HasLabs, but I believe that it'll happen at some point. But.
I mean, possibly so. I mean, we haven't really seen it yet, but yeah, they have to account for some kind of error. They have to account for, refunds and whatever. 3-Star Draw says they push back the shit I've already paid for and send stuff on pre-order months early. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. War Chest Full of Toys says also sucks they pushed the next HasLab to San Diego Comic-Con, going to be 2026 until the next one. It's time they gave us 2 HasLabs. I'm down for that, which, he may very well be. I don't know how many other people would be ready for that, just for the simple fact that I don't know that everybody could afford 2 in 1 year. Yeah. That is asking a lot for I'd say most people. 3-Star also says they've got $7.5 million in my money. Now they've got 279 of your money, but the 7.5 million is everybody else's. But I get what you're saying though. Also, Shark Guy says asking for compensation from $1 billion company for a toy helicopter, absurd levels of ridiculous. So we're getting, we're getting those different responses in there, or same responses really to a extent. And I understand. Go ahead.
I just want to go back to that multiple HasLab thing. I mean, it's all but confirmed that Lucasfilm caused this whole issue.
Explain that for people who really have not heard or don't really know about that.
So, the Cantina HasLab was supposed to launch much earlier, and then the G.I. Joe one was supposed to be in June, right? So May you were going to have the Cantina one, in June you were going to have the G.I. Joe one. So once one finished, they'd have to start the next one. All right, so you'd have this sequence, and then by the next year, you'd potentially have the product, right? Or 18 months or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
But it's all but confirmed that Lucasfilm came back to Hasbro and said, you have to make these changes. And so they're like, crud. And they had to go back to the drawing board, make those changes, incorporate those things, and then repackage and relaunch that HasLab. And that blew everybody's timeline. And it threw the Yojo June into SDCC reveal, right? So they just threw that over there because they have to launch this one now, see how it does, and then do this one. So you still have them back to back. They just push the timeline a little bit. As far as the rest of them, everything goes in a cycle. Everything is set up at time frames, and if one domino falls, then it just takes out everything that's connected to that timeline.
Right. And I think too. While the brands themselves are not the same, they all probably have their own individual budgets to an extent, and depending on their popularity and the things that they've done in the last year, let's say the last how many ever they measure those things by and plan for. At the same token, it's they still are connected as a company. So if something fails tragically, or they put out a line, they spend money, then it affects other brands under the umbrella of Hasbro. I mean, it doesn't matter, bottom line. And what you're saying is very much makes sense.
Yep.
And highlight that real quick while I look something up here, if you can.
Yeah, I'm going to catch on to that point too. I got another point back on just what you just said there too. The Cantina is, 1,036 backers away from funding with 6 days left. I will tell you that most Kickstarters get probably about 30 to 40% of their backers in the last week or the last 24 hours, really. The last 24 hours are crucial.
Right.
And so that's everybody's who's getting in the last second, even though they don't have to pay for it until the thing's over. People wait to see that they have the funds or they have those discussions at home or whatever. It's not outside the realm of it funding. It's not going to hit any stretch goals. Not very many. If they do, it's a shame because it looks like a nice product. I just don't know how many people want it. And some other guys were talking about it. It's a diorama piece. It is a photography piece. It's not a toy. It's not something like that. It's a very much a display piece. And so that may be taking away from some of it as well. And I just think people are kind of upset with Star Wars at the moment too.
I agree.
Black Series has been a big failure recently for them. The vintage line has kept the thing going. But it's just one of those things that it's been a challenge for them to figure out exactly how to stimulate the market, and timing is everything also. So they need to rethink some of the timing on some of this, I think. But
Yeah, and that's true. But again, that timing can get thrown off, right? Like
yeah,
those things can all get thrown off, and depending on how something performs or
yep.
what their original plans are, and then those things just for whatever reason they get thrown off. And unfortunately, in this particular case, it seems that GI Joe collectors who have been the most supportive, it seems like for the most part in the
Yeah,
last couple of few years, are the ones paying the price.
yep.
It seems like.
So
And I want to say hi to Eric Thurman real quick
what's
too,
up,
man.
buddy?
Thank you for jumping in, brother.
Going back to sort of what you were talking about before, just a different perspective from a different corporation and how corporations work. Um, I I work for a very large corporation, okay, but within that corporation, there are different brands, and each region has their own brand name, but they're all part of the parent company, right? And in 2020, the brand that I work for specifically was the most successful brand in the entire company. We were the only ones well and exceeding our budget for whatever reason. We use different rules in Texas, I guess. I don't know, whatever. Right. So we were the most profitable. We were the most successful. We were the ones that were growing very fast. And then in 2022, the company came down and said, thank you for all of the stuff that you've done. Now we have to take the revenue that you've generated and distribute it to these other groups that are suffering. So you guys can no longer expand. So they halted our expansion, even though we needed it.
Right.
And took that revenue that we had generated and pushed it over to some of those more struggling areas of the company, because you have to spread out the hurt, the damage, whatever from what's going on within the company, and then you have to bring up those hurting brands. And so while GI Joe may be the most successful one at Hasbro right now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's doing really, really well.
Yes.
That success, some of that success is being distributed to these other brands to keep them alive.
And
to
that's,
keep them
I mean,
going.
right. I mean, that's within business. And like you said, I mean, this is in a completely different business that you're in. This is not entertainment. This is not toys. This is not,
Right.
Collectibles or whatever it is. Different businesses have to operate that way when they have different arms and they have different brands. And so, yes, does it suck? Yes, it sucks. Is it sometimes a necessary evil? Yes, it is. Does it really hurt the people who are doing reviews or trying to get product in this particular case? I would assume so, but at the same token, once the HasLabs start going out, I think all those things really fall together. It's the individual figures, the individual pieces we see that all of a sudden have had some distribution issues. And that brings me to my next point. But
it just ruins my 1983 GI Joe classified action figure photo that I've been trying to do with Wild Bill and Doc, and I can't get a hold of Wild Bill and Doc right now to finish up the photo.
It's funny you mention you can't get a hold of Doc, because right now I think you can actually.
I've been looking.
So I have not. I have been looking through pictures, and while for some reason my pictures keep going back to a Roblox picture that my son took and screenshotted 5 years ago. I will say we have seen those. Real quick, I want to say War Chest Full of Toys. He said Hasbro for real though kicks ass with customer service. Even when my Sergeant Slaughter came without glasses, they sent me a complete new fig and told me to keep the other one. And then also follows up, and yes, I know not everyone can handle more than one HasLab per year, but he's ready for one, and I get it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do actually, and I think 3-Star will have to say that as well. Now, he and I both have had our complaints as far as HasLab or Hasbro rather, and what we're talking about right now. But at the same time, he's had some issues, customer service issues. I have as well. There's crusty old Crow. What's up, buddy? Legend Series is in the house as well. Let me highlight him real quick. What's up, bud? Thank you. Thanks, guys, for stopping in for a little bit, man. So we're just kind of talking right now to bring it back around and recap a little bit about Hasbro and some of their issues with distribution or the delay in the Dragonfly on the HasLab. So that brings me to, yes, Doc, Night Creeper, Jinx have been popping up in Walmarts around the country. I know I saw in St. Louis and some other places. From what I understand, here
Kentucky
in
had it.
Kentucky, I've also seen it here in Tennessee.
Oh,
Now, I tried to look up online. I couldn't find anything, but it's probably because they haven't been updated. Those things get updated like once a week or something like that. However, I had to work today and also had to take my son home. So I didn't have a lot of time before prepping for tonight to try to run by Walmart. I would have loved to, but I won't get a chance tonight, maybe in the morning. I have not seen them myself. It doesn't mean I don't believe it, because I do believe it. And so what do you think about the distribution issues of, I got an email saying Doc was going to be in September now for me, and Torch is being shipped right now. Naugahyde is coming in a few more days, but yet Jinx, Night Creeper, Doc, they're showing up on shelves. People that pre-ordered them, the minute they went available, are having to wait till September. How do you feel about that, Matthew?
well, I mean, it's been a problem since day one with this line. But that was in COVID. And even though we're through COVID, so to speak, there are still a lot of supply chain and distribution issues coming from China. So there's a lot of it you can't control, because Hasbro gets there straight from the factory. Some of these other places that they go from the factory to a holding center, and then they go out to those companies. Sometimes they go straight from the factory to those companies. And so you have all these different things. So people along the chain are getting it at different times, because that's just when they get it, and they can't hold on to it. They got to put it. And so it's been a logistical nightmare, and there isn't anyone currently able to streamline any form of distribution right now coming from China. Okay. I mean, it is what it is. And I don't see a solution, because I don't know if it's because people aren't capable, or they're not willing to dive into it, or if it's just not possible. And right now I'm leaning towards it's not possible, because of those things I talked about before. They go from the factory to these different places and get sent out.
And without being in logistics, now I have a regular at my bar. He is in logistics. He is the overall office manager of a pretty large office here in Nashville. I talk to him regularly. He talks about dealing with upwards of 500 emails a day. And dealing in logistics, it means moving product across the country. And there is a lot of really stupid people dealing in moving product, as I have seen some of the emails that he's shown me. Now, Aaron the toy enhancer is here too. What's up, man? What's up? TK Storm also. How you doing, man? I won't give you my exact address, but I'll give you an idea roughly about where I'm at, man. But if you ever want to try to meet up or come by my work, not that you need to come spend money, it's nothing like that. But yeah, man, if you are in the same city that I am, then I'm sure I could probably say hello at some point in time. Absolutely, man. Also, real quick, Todd C jumped in here. How you doing? Thank you so much for stopping by. War Chest Full of Toys says, we have Doc and Night Creepers here. I got Doc today. And I'm sure there's people here in Nashville that probably sought out those if they are showing up. I did see some pictures. I don't even want to go to that right now, because it's really bothering me, because I even went on Facebook and went to the classified groups that I'm a part of, and I'm trying to find those photos, and it really actually makes me mad, because I really did prepare for that and had them, and for some reason my program just keeps backing me back to a damn Roblox picture.
What excites me about the pictures I've seen is it looks like that there are 2 Night Creepers and 2 Docs per case. That's what it appears. And I'm excited about that, because that means that I'm going to find myself a Doc.
and chances are, man, if you take a swing tomorrow on your way home from work, you probably will, if that's the case. Now, let's see here. My bad. I'm gonna take a look at that first. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the thing of it is, when I was talking about logistics, and a friend of mine working in logistics, is that it's difficult, man.
Yeah.
And moving shit across the country and trying to fulfill orders, and you're talking
Yep.
about your big box stores, you're talking about other places, your GameStop, all this other stuff, right? While it sounds silly to say, but in the last 4 years, logistics, i.e., shipping things across the
Yep.
country, has become increasingly a pain. It's
Yep.
increasingly costly.
Yep.
Getting competent people to do it. And I'm not saying that that's a failure on Hasbro's part by any means, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
say that it's not, because I don't know. And we're not in those meetings. We're not seeing those emails. We're not dealing with those people. There are a couple of people I could probably reach out to and try to find out if they have anything to do with it, or carry those products. But nonetheless, it is kind of a bitch. I ain't gonna lie, because you pre-order this stuff, and unless you have a source, unless you have somebody that can freaking send you stuff for free, or send it to you early, if you're a reviewer and you've got a channel of a decent size or whatever, and you do have those options, that access, then yeah, man, some of that stuff is crucial. And yeah, there's a Helix right there, and I noticed that comment came in. Shark Eyes says, I just opened a Helix, waited long to get this classified, and my what is it saying? My lord, her left leg is janky as hell. Completely janky.
Yeah. Even with a little bit of heat, that takes quite a while to fix. The other issue that I have with her is that I dremeled out some space there and some space
Oh.
there, so that she actually has an ab crunch now.
Okay.
Because if you don't, that's about as far as she bends forward. But when you do that, then she can bend forward that much.
Let me see here. I was gonna try to actually let me hide that. Maybe it'll let me
I
full screen.
30 years ago now, I guess, I worked in logistics a little bit, so I know a little bit about that stuff. And then it was totally different. I mean, we were creating street data that later became Google Street Data.
Okay. Yeah, the Street View stuff, or all the street data for Street View, probably.
Yeah, well, and then
yeah.
we were geoplotting everything and putting it into maps and doing all kinds of stuff for
Okay.
logistics stuff. But logistics is a pain.
80s Toy Boy, what's up? He said there's a huge truck driver shortage too. Apparently, yes, there is, and eventually, when it becomes all automated, there's going to be a real issue with jobs.
Well, I don't know if that's actually going to happen.
Ooh, man.
I don't know if it'll happen in our lifetime, but
I think it will, actually. I do believe that. Now, we'll be old as shit, but I do believe it will actually happen. I really do. As quick as technology moves these days, and one of those I actually want to bring up with you as well. Another story I did want to bring up with you here. Man, boy, you know what? I knew that was my phone. I apologize for my phone going off in the background. I kept thinking, like, who in the world? What is going on? And obviously that's 3-Star Draw, who is sending me photos
to put up there.
To try to bring up, and these are great. They are great photos, and it's the exact same ones that I actually had saved, edited, and cropped on my computer to bring up, and yet for some reason they're just not happening. I mean, think of it as, I don't know that, and I don't know that we even need to see them. I think we all know it by now. I think everybody's seen them. They've seen the Facebook pictures. They've seen the pictures on various websites, histank.com or whatever. It is happening, and it is really a pain in the ass. I think that's ultimately, at the end of the day, knowing that you're waiting and waiting and waiting. He says, share the messenger post or don't. Well, on the fly, man, it's pulling it up, and everything. It's
got to be careful what data or what information you're sharing.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. There's certain things maybe that come up on that screen that I have to be careful, maybe, that I don't want to show. And
I did want to throw a shout out back to Aaron too. I hope your puppy's doing well.
Man,
getting on the mend. But keep an eye on that doggo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, actually. And that was definitely a topic of conversation the other night. as well. And so yeah, always hopefully everything's good or going to be good. I just recently, the mother of my son, she quit her job at a lab and became a certified dog trainer.
Wow,
And so when
nice.
I dropped my son off today, she has 3 dogs at the house. One of them is going to be found a home on Wednesday, and she has 2 others that she's training, and she has to film videos and stuff like that, and showing training them for the company and all that stuff. So very cool, and something she's probably wanted to do for a long time. So yeah, definitely for the doggos, and hopefully if Punk is still listening, maybe Roman's sitting there laying down while he's doing something or making a video. Who knows? Anyway, so
He's
yeah,
cranking
man.
out those review videos, man. He's
Yeah,
got more
he is.
product coming in every
Holy
day.
moly, jeez Louise! I mean, dude, and that's no joke. I mean, between Gridiron and
Yep.
Classified and whatever else, yeah,
The Fist.
the Fist, yeah, that was a shaky thing. He's been cranking them out, so it's good to see, man. It's it's fun making content. I ain't gonna lie, it can be a pain in the butt when you're trying to come up with ideas. In my case, or you're trying to edit and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah,
really
that's
is.
difficult.
So real quick, man.
He didn't throw his Jinx figure like he did the Savage Crucible. So.
Oh yeah, that's right, boy. That was ooh,
it
talk
was a
about a
toss. It was a toss.
firestorm. It was a toss. Talk about a firestorm, man. I mean, holy moly. So
well, at least they know who you are now, man.
Well, that's true. Before we jump into House of the Dragon, which I think is kind of the main topic of the day, and I know not everybody watches it, I did want to go over a few other stories real quick. One of those is as I sing my little tune here. All right, let's bring this back up. Golly. You want to talk about, I'll tell you what, man, running a stream, Matthew,
I know.
is it will absolutely drive you crazy when you think you've got everything buttoned up and you think you've got it all tightened up. You've done 7 or 8 or 15 of them, right? And then next thing you know, it's like, yeah, I had that all fixed up and ready to go, and then it shows you a Roblox picture.
Yeah.
Well,
right. you know how that Boomer Gary feels about it.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, here we go. Let's put you there. So, I wanted to ask your feelings on AI and AI art and AI when it comes to movies and television. Apple has been, really trying to grow this, but you have several movie studios that are partnering up to try to on the opposite side of it. The main thing I think being that, to me, from a copyright or from a trademark, from taking footage or taking someone whose image is owned by a company, which unfortunately, when it comes to artists or movie stars, their image is owned. Han Solo, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, obviously Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford. Their image and likeness, particularly those movies, are forever owned in perpetuity, right, by someone else. And so I really wonder with AI and how quickly AI music, how quickly AI is moving from a perspective of not being able to tell if something is real, if this has been completely made up with keywords and phrases and whatnot. How do you feel about AI and it being used in art and entertainment moving forward?
Well, you remember those Diet Coke commercials back in the 80s?
Were you talking about with Cindy Crawford?
No. Well, okay.
Or
Yeah,
that's Pepsi, maybe.
No, but Diet Coke did a whole series of ads with dead people. And people
yes,
that had passed away, and then they incorporated other people, and they did an amazing job, better than what they're doing today with CGI and stuff like that.
right.
It was an amazing thing that they did with Diet Coke back then, and they went back to those families and purchased from the estates the rights to do those things. They couldn't get it from the film studios to use a piece of stock footage or something. They had to go to the families to say, can we use their likeness for this purpose? Because you're manipulating it and changing it into something else.
Right.
AI has no precautions on that. You can steal anybody's work from anywhere and make it your own. This is the primary concern. You are using a compilation of your own artwork and putting into the system to help you modify or create something new for you that's based on your stuff. I have no problem with it if you set those parameters. As soon as you set parameters to take things from other people that have made things, then unless you are citing them, giving them credit or sending them royalties or giving them a piece of the pie, whatever that pie may be, however small it may be, then you are stealing. And there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You are stealing from other people who have created things better than you so that you can do it easier and faster. You know, it's almost like Rob Liefeld just putting up the tracing paper and just tracing his old artwork, but it's his own artwork.
It's his own work.
Right.
Now, does, in a way, does this fall in with music such that obviously for years and especially recently we've seen copyright claims about Marvin Gaye songs or other artists. One of the most famous ones is Men at Work using the flute part for and the melody from an old Australian song, which our Aussies in the chat can probably refresh my memory on the name of it. I actually looked it up last week.
From Land Down Under.
Yeah, and Land Down Under, and it came up that and they found that was infringing on the. And I thought, well, with music, it's really difficult, right? There's only so many chord progressions. There's only so many theories you can go within music and within a certain genre, and it's kind of like one of those things where you're like, well, everything's going to eventually sound like something else, right? You get to the point where nothing new can be created. So, in that. Once a Jolly Swagman. I think that is it. Somewhere in there. Frostbite. Thank you very much for that, by the way. But yeah, so with this, it really starts to get in that creepy territory too, I think, where you start to be able, right now in Hollywood, from my understanding, is that every actor is being 3D modeled 3D, they have 3D cameras, hundreds of them.
Not necessarily, because that's a big part of what the strike was about.
Okay, and I remember that, and I actually, this is in the article, but I know that. Okay, so let me rephrase that then. I believe that was probably big happening, and it was like, hey, wait a minute, we need to stop this.
So yeah, the big part of what was happening is they were taking day players and getting them to scan their images and saying, hey, we're going to pay you your day rate to come in and get scanned, and never hire you again after that, because now we own the rights.
You don't have to.
And we can insert you and multiples of you into any Matrix movie or any movie that we want, right?
Anything
that they want, they can insert you in the background of. And since you're a day player and you do this walk, and then whenever we need that walk, we're going to put you in the background of that. And that's what part of the major pushback was, is like, wait a minute, you're killing our job.
Right.
To do this. That's what we make our livelihood on, is every day going to a set, getting paid, getting fed, and being on screen for whatever, for the background. I may be cut on the cutting room floor, but I still get paid because I was a part of this thing to fill the background. And now it's all being filled with these pre-scanned people.
And if you think about an artist that passes away. Now, obviously, you have families that get involved. It came up even on Punk with Toys stream last night with Pat Tillman and his family being very protective. And I do understand that they are. So when it comes to making a Pat Tillman figure, like a classified hero figure, right? A real American hero, Pat Tillman, like that would be awesome. But I can understand his family being very protective of that. And obviously his name and image and likeness. And I want to say, hey, it's Jay Gonzo. How you doing? And also Same Time Toys. What's up, Shane? How you doing, man? Good to see y'all. Thank you for stopping in for a little bit. Maybe stream hopping, this and that, whatever. Hopefully we'll keep you entertained for a little bit. We're talking about AI, and so real quick, War Chest said, nice. I work with AI for my business, and
I saw that. I don't want
Many
to make
businesses.
I don't want to make too many enemies or start too many fights with it, but yeah, I mean, I'm going to be opinionated about it.
But that's okay, because it doesn't matter. The bottom line is that's what I want. And I hope that's what everybody else wants. I mean, it's not really about making enemies. It's about, discourse
Yeah.
and discussing opinions, and whether you're at the opposite sides of it. Reading here, Apple has really been pushing for this. They have the what is it, Sora AI tool. And it says Apple's growing partnership with OpenAI further calls into question the standing of major studios in the Motion Picture Association, which counts Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and Netflix amongst its members on issues related to the use of intellectual property to train AI systems. And ultimately, I think, it says OpenAI is facing a torrent of lawsuits from most corners of creative industry, including artists, authors, music publishers, accusing it of misappropriating copyrighted material to vault it to a multi-billion-dollar valuation as it appears to encroach upon the entertainment industry.
Yep.
In music in particular, because excuse me, you can actually type in Dolly Parton melancholy summer song, and it will create a song for you with a voice that is somewhat in the Dolly Parton-ish sound. It doesn't, maybe not her exact voice, but it will throw those keywords together. And in essence, you could create your own song using keywords that is like or unlike other things out there. But at some point in time, it's really going to be just like other things. It's drawing, right? It's feeding a machine information that's already been made by humans. Now, at some point in time, I think the computers will be feeding information to itself, Skynet or whatever. But
I think that it's a useful tool. We just have to figure out how best to use it without abusing other people.
What's fascinating to me, and I just heard this the other day, is that you have these different AI softwares that you can use. My son uses one. You've got Chat GPT, you got all these other things. But I think ultimately it's about what is fair or what is original works. And if you can just feed AI, someone else's works, and to let it create something. Some people would argue, Matthew, that it's the same thing as having a real person be inspired by other artists, be inspired by works of art, by music, by media. Some people would argue that point.
And I do understand that point, but at the same time, you're not really creating it. Still, you're not really creating it. You're putting in some parameters and saying, I kind of like this, I kind of like that, and kind of throwing it together. You don't necessarily have the skill to do what those artists did. You're just piggybacking on what they've already created. And that's where I come from. I do see the point that's like, hey, it's an homage or whatever, and I get it. Yeah, so thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, War Chest is no fight. We use it for software development and obviously CEO management, ranking and growth, clients' website traffic, and Google rankings, which obviously has become, from an advertisement standpoint, the new norm with search engine optimization.
Yeah,
big
business.
Big business.
That AI, as it stands right now, is not even AI. It is an advanced search engine. That's all it really is, because you're putting all these things together. And if you dig into it a little bit, there are some toy makers right now that were using it for some package design. Some people got upset about it, and I understand why, because of the reasons that I mentioned before. But also, AI does not understand anatomy. And so it will always get anatomical features wrong.
Yeah, hands and stuff like that is very interesting.
You'll get extra fingers. You'll get extra, ribs, or there'll be some distortion in the face. There's all kinds of things with it.
Now the interesting thing to me, the part of the story, is that like OpenAI, for instance, is owned by Microsoft. 49% of it is owned by Microsoft. And then you have Sora, which Apple, is unveiling, or well, it says follows OpenAI unveiling in February Sora, but you have Apple wanting to jump in here too. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, what this is really about, yes, it's about copyright. I think it's about intellectual property.
Yep.
I do think to an extent, depending on how it's used, is a really dangerous precedent to set as we
Yep.
move forward in movies and television and works of art. Music, because we won't know what's actually real and what's not. I think I give it a year or less before you could tell the difference between an AI song and a real song written by
Yeah.
real musicians. 6 months, maybe a year at tops.
Yeah.
But I think what it comes down to is which company wants to control it, because at the end of the day, they do not want this software out there for the general public to use without having to pay a fee, a license to them.
Yep.
So who has the most money to purchase it up? And then at that point, they own it. They can distribute it. They can charge for it,
Yep.
just like Adobe, just like whatever. And then you can use different tiers of it, different, and so I wanted to bring that up because I just want to get your opinion on what you thought about AI with art and moving forward in the medium of
it's
film,
a challenge. It's problematic. It's a tool that we're going to have to get used to using, but it is a tool.
Do you think it needs regulation from the government? Because that's where we're going to be headed. We are going to be headed to regulation by the government. That is what we're going to be headed
here's
to.
my issue with that, because the government will eliminate certain search parameters so that it doesn't hurt itself, because the government, nobody in the government wants AI to function the way that it is currently functioning and let it run rampant, because it will find all of the stuff that we're looking for and know exactly where it came from and back it up with factual evidence and everything else. And they don't want that. So if the government is involved, it will be more propaganda and media manipulation directly from the government.
I agree.
I don't want you to highlight it, but Frostbite just made a chat there, and it didn't come in on YouTube. I was wondering if it got filtered. Do we have filtered words or something?
I don't have any filtered words. I don't have any link. Like if somebody shared a link
there
or
are
come watch my stream or something like that. I did not filter.
There are
Let me
some
look
standard ones. I don't know if he deleted it or not, but I saw it here on this, and I didn't see it there. So I was wondering if he deleted it or if it got filtered.
I do want to look real quick.
It's the one right before the no control Skynet. It's right above that.
I'm right there with you on this one, Matthew, and then Shark. Let's see.
If you're looking on YouTube,
so I see Frostbite. No one controls Skynet. I see.
And then on
up above that.
It's literally the one right above it
on yes, actually, Matthew, we have the same thing in the 3D printing world. This is Frostbite.
Just watch those couple of those words there just in case.
Yeah. Probably so. It's Dong Ziploc. How about that?
Yeah.
And listen, just so you guys know, man. So YouTube is an interesting place. I've had 2 streams that have been like stopped cold for whatever reason after they ended, just due to Disney for one. And I learned my lesson on the first one. And so I decided, okay, well then I'm only going to show still images, right? Well, that one also a few weeks ago got stopped dead in its tracks. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And so also, yes, there are words in the chat that will not show up. There are certain keywords.
Do you have this stream? Do you have the stream marked for adult content?
Yes, I generally have it marked as not for kids. So that is something.
Then it shouldn't be blocking words like that necessarily. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And maybe, I can review it when the stream goes up and I can watch the live chat, because I remembered specifically what was written on StreamYards, or at least coming in on mine on StreamYards, obviously through YouTube. But I'll check that out. That's interesting. Real quick, Same Time Toys too says AI is going to outstep government regulation just like the internet has. And to an extent I could see that, But I really think we're going to get into a tricky place here
Yep.
soon where, this is becoming, it's one thing like they could not have foreseen the internet when it happened and then all of a sudden it blows up, right? Now that they've had enough time and enough experience and enough, whatever with a lot of these tools, right? And people that know these tools and have been using them. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I just, to me, it's an interesting debate. It's an interesting topic, especially for comic artists and other artists and stuff like that.
I just think it needs regular and vigorous debate about its usage and proper usage and how we need to move forward with using it as a tool, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's
Right.
here. But
yes.
again, it's an advanced search engine, so that's all it is. It's not true AI yet. At the same time, we just need to come to some sort of consensus on it, and the government being involved only messes things up. So
I agree.
That's just how I feel about that.
I agree 100%. Something else that I've been kind of somewhat keeping an eye on, and I haven't been able to find any information because I was hoping to bring up like a story about Warhammer 40K and the TV show for Wraith Mace. And, that was big news when it happened.
Yeah.
That was a big deal. I think a lot of us like Henry Cavill.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all, for the most part, are, have enjoyed his roles and everything. Man, I'm going to tell you, every time I try to bring up some new news or look for some information on that show,
it's dead.
It is far and few between, if
it's
anything.
Dead.
Is it dead? So tell me. Give me an idea, because I have not been able to find anything, nor have I found a stream that I watched that has talked about it.
So it all falls back to the creators and their shifting agendas and what they want to include or have included in their game. And when they did something that goes against all Warhammer 40K lore and said this is the way it is, around that same time, there was discussions with Henry Cavill, and Henry Cavill was not pleased with that.
Understandably, after his experience with The Witcher.
Yeah. What they did with him with in The Witcher is kind of unforgivable. And so somehow the whole thing, I think, pretty much got scrapped. I haven't heard that definitively. They're either working really hard on making it really good, or they found a way to get rid of Henry Cavill and the whole thing fell apart because Henry, I believe, had a controlling interest in it to some degree. So if he was taken out of the project was going to be dead.
And that's what I understood as well.
At least for the foreseeable future. And that all happened around the same time as that one announcement that or whatever it was that came out on Warhammer 40K, where they dramatically changed a piece of lore that does not make any logical sense whatsoever, but they did it for optics.
Yes.
And to try and get some of that special money that actually ends up killing your brand. So people should have figured that out by now. I mean, if anybody learned anything from Gillette and Bud Light and Tractor Supply, you should continue to learn the same lesson.
Yes. And we don't have to jump way too far into that, but if you do know anything about the brand, that definitely upset a lot of people. And however, much to their dismay, the owners of the IP really don't care. It does not matter to them.
For IP, maybe not. Maybe it will at some point. Those other companies, they lost hundreds of millions of dollars, so they started paying attention.
Well, and same time, Toy says it died to the lawyer's desk. Games Workshop doesn't like giving up their IP. It's sad because, like, me knowing nothing about Warhammer 40K, but loving the look and the aesthetics, right? Like just everything that looks super cool about it. I've never done a deep dive. I have watched some animated videos and stuff that were really creative and really cool. I know I have the Bolt Gun game downloaded. It's a boomer shooter. It looks really fun.
Yeah.
But I was just hoping to give Wraith Mace, who is a loyal listener, and a really cool dude. I was hoping to give him some news of some kind.
Yeah.
And man, I can't find anything. It's all from November or
Yep.
December or like, and then I found an article from 3 hours ago, and it's one of those fake articles where it literally
Yeah.
says nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. That's the
Literally
AI
nothing.
generated, no editor
Oh
article.
man, that's
Same Time Toys. Yes and no. Yes, they make good money, but if they keep changing the lore like they have been, they will lose the most loyal and rabid fans that they've had for such a long period of time. If this becomes a consistent trend, it's going to kill the brand. And those people that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on Warhammer stuff aren't going to spend that money anymore. Do they need Hollywood money? No. Is having more output into the rest of the world, because the UK is the primary source for Games Workshop stuff, right? The UK is big into that, and the US is kind of feeding its way in. I've loved it since the early 2000s. Late 90s actually is when I first got my first minis from it, the pewter ones. I don't play it very often, but I love the design aesthetic. I love the lore. I don't know much about the lore, but from what I do know, I do love it. I'm not an aficionado by any means, but I have deep dive on a whole bunch of YouTube channels on some of the lore stuff. And I love what Wraith Mace is wanting to do, and that guy's awesome. So I'd love to support him.
Tonight, when we get done, I am doing a deep dive after I watched the last 14 shitty minutes of a show that we both hate. I am doing a deep dive actually.
So you haven't seen that thing I texted you about? Sorry if I spoiled that.
It's fine. Yeah, right. So look, Wraith sent me 2 videos.
Yeah.
Explaining the lore and like the history, and I love that kind of stuff. I'm going to tell you guys too, real quick, man. While I can mention this, while I've got y'all's attention. I really wanted to bring up a creator that I really, really, truly enjoy, and it's probably somebody that y'all have never heard of. And I discovered this person. It is a channel, and here, let me go real quick while I get rid of some of this stuff here. All right, so real quick, I just want to share this, and I really beg you guys to check this channel out. This is called Wizards and Warriors on YouTube. And this channel, this guy does some great animation, but what he does is they, I don't know, whatever. He goes through battles and lore documentary, but even particular battles from Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Fallout. You have Lord of the Rings. You have wonderful, wonderful breakdowns like the Elven armies of the First Age, Middle Earth lore documentary. And it looks, when he's doing them, Matthew, it looks like he's doing a chessboard, but with animations, or like a game board, like a Risk or a, you know what I mean? Axis and Allies. And he does these game boards. He's got Elder Scrolls lore. He's got, I believe, some Warhammer right here. And so if you guys get a chance to check this out, man, this guy, it's Wizards and Warriors. He's got 375,000 subs.
That's awesome.
What a wonderful creator. I promise you won't be disappointed. If you love lore videos, if you love watching how battles took place, he does a really great job of explaining them in great detail and just kind of breaking things down. So yeah, Wizards and Warriors, check that out, man. I have had a lot of fun with that channel over the last couple of years and discovering it.
The best battle put on screen is the Battle of Helm's Deep from the Two Towers of Lord of the Rings. That is the best mass battle that I have put on film. That's one of my favorites.
It is I mean, I remember being in the theater to see it, and the air conditioning broke in the theater, and it was like 100 degrees, and it was completely packed. We actually sat in the aisle to watch the entire movie on the sticky stairs of a movie theater in Tennessee. And and you could smell the vomit and the drunk people. And But it did not diminish my enjoyment of the Two Towers, man. One of the greatest trilogies, if not one of the top two.
Yep,
Debatable in everybody's eyes.
for sure.
Same time, Toys also says I'm a 25-year
Yep,
veteran of the
the
Long
Long
War,
War.
and it
Yep.
somewhat sounds like you are too.
Well, no,
Matthew, not
no,
quite, not quite.
no,
I get
no,
it.
no.
No, no,
I
no. It's
mean,
all good.
he plays.
Yeah, no. I'm just messing with you, man. If I was able to do it and play, that'd be awesome. I do want to go over one more topic. Just looking at kind of what I've got on my stream deck here. I did want to mention, if anybody's looking forward to that Captain America movie,
Ooh,
they have
not good.
undergone unbelievable extensive reshoots, and it is to the tune now that the budget will be upwards of $375 million, which means it needs to make $1 billion to turn a profit for Marvel. And I don't think that's going to happen, considering what they've done with the characters in the
Well, and
MCU.
just remember this too: the budget that they're reporting
Is not the actual budget.
is usually 30 to 60% under what it actually is.
Good Lord.
Because they don't consider the money that they've given to pay themselves, because there's a lot of that goes on too.
Right.
And it also may or may not include the UK tax breaks that they get.
Oh yeah, right. There are a lot of conditions within that as well. But
Yep.
yes, you're right. They usually will maybe not report those. Eventually they come out.
And they come out because to get those tax breaks from the UK, you have to submit your actual budget to get the proper tax breaks. And so when that information is released on the UK taxes, is the only time that we come close to getting an actual budget. And if you don't know, there's been lots of deep dives on it, but whatever they say their production budget is has to be 3 times that in the box office to actually make a profit. And most of that has to be US, because they get the most money from the US, overseas a little less, and even China even less. So if you divide it by country and where it's coming from, you get a smaller and smaller portion the further you go from the US. And between the marketing budget, the production budget, and what they are paying the theaters as well as receiving from the theaters, the box office has to be 3 times whatever the production budget is to break even.
And it really seems like they've had to just completely rewrite this movie.
And we knew that. We knew
yes.
that from the very
Yes.
first screening when they said this was done. And
Yes.
then they started screening it and they're like, oh, this is really, really bad. And a whole bunch of other stuff came out at the same time. And then they said they were going back for reshoots and they reshot the entire movie. I mean, this is another Solo lost money.
Don't you love, is this supposed to be Cap right here with the cane? Is that who that's supposed to be on this cover? This is volume 1 of the all new Captain America volume 1, 2014, actually.
Yes. So yes, that is Captain America after they aged him up, and I forgot exactly what it was, but he lost the serum. He went through the time dimensional thing, was murdered or killed, and then came back from it, and then he aged, became Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then passed it on to Bucky. Bucky was Captain America, and that was actually a really good redemption arc for Bucky.
But they chose not to follow that, right?
And then for optics, they made Sam Wilson Captain America, which didn't make sense because he was the Falcon, and he was his own man in the right of Falcon, and now he's usurped another character's role because his role wasn't prominent enough. I mean, you're saying that Falcon wasn't good enough to be Falcon.
He was great as Falcon. That's a great character. It's always been a great character.
And it has.
Yes.
Yep.
No one ever, I don't think anybody, if you were watching that end game and you see Cap, although it made no sense for Cap to go back and live a life where he takes no part in fighting for anything. That was stupid. And lives a regular, normal life, watching all this crap go down.
Oh, Infinity War! Infinity War is one of my favorites. Endgame is one of the crappiest movies they've ever made because of the character assassination they did on both Tony Stark and Captain America. It just doesn't make sense how they ended their thing, because at that point, Tony Stark would have sacrificed everything to return back to normal. So he would have sacrificed the potential of his own daughter, to go
Yes.
back to before the blip happened so that nobody else was impacted across the entire universe was impacted from that 4 years of people not being there and then suddenly coming back.
Right.
And then you got to think about all those people that were in airplanes that aren't there when they come back and fall down to their
Yeah,
deaths. And
we could go down one
so,
day. Maybe we'll go down this freaking rabbit hole of it.
so an intelligent man wouldn't have done that, and Captain
Yes,
America would not have
stood
been
on the sideline.
so selfish to sequester him away and not deal with any of those things, to be in hiding that whole time so that he could be happy with Peggy when he could move forward and be happy with Sharon. But whatever.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, no, it's awful. And really, if you were watching Endgame, if he had given the shield to Bucky,
Yep.
emotionally, story wise, it makes all the sense in the world, and
All of
that
it.
would have been, a wonderful way to finish that up if that's the way you're going to take it. Real quick, I had to mention this because it's just so out of the we're just can we talk about how small the cheese coney at Sonic has gotten? The hot dog is like the size of a pinky. I can't even. I haven't had one in a while. I saw the comment. I couldn't help myself. I'm like, what the hell are you talking
You
about,
don't like the
Jeff?
footlong pinky?
Hey, I'll tell you what, I can only get about around the first knuckle. That's all I'm going to say about that, guys. All right, so listen, Shark Guy says they have to nail that Cap film. A tier 1 character film can't catch a brick at this point of the MCU. Listen, it doesn't matter. This film is not going to succeed. It's not going to make its budget. It's going to be a disaster. Nobody cares about a Sam Wilson Captain America, especially after what they did with the show. And what they did with Bucky. It's just not. The MCU right now is in shambles, and they need to completely recast the characters, recast Cap, recast Tony, and just do that and continue to recast those characters as those characters age out or the actors age out. And that's that. I don't know what else they could do. You're not.
They have to.
And
And they've always had to do that. Those characters, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, even Hawkeye and Ant-Man, they always need to be a part of the Marvel universe.
Always.
Spider-Man
they have to be recast.
So they have to be continually recast. And we can go into Spider-Boy and the whole issue with that too, but
but no. We'll stay with that because and I've got some topics saved for Friday. Gonna be a really busy day for me Friday, but I'm definitely gonna finish a stream because I cannot let the denizens of the internet down. As I stole that from Paul Chato.
Yeah.
I love that though. I can't let you guys down. So Friday I will be doing a stream for sure, 100%. By the way, just to give a shout out, Punk's Pit for members only is happening Friday night as well. Keep your eyes tuned to what time. And that's for members only on a Punk with Toys channel. That'll be fun. I'm going to try to jump into that, but I will be at my sister's birthday party Friday night. So I don't know exactly what time I'll be able to get in, but I definitely want to get into that because I enjoy that. And if you're a member of Punk's channel, then I highly advise you to jump in. It's a great time of guys just cutting up, maybe talking about toys, maybe not talking about toys. We might be talking about girls. We might be talking about cars. We might be talking about football. It does, whatever. Doesn't matter. But if you're a member of a Punk with Toys channel, I highly recommend jumping in on Friday night to a Punk's Pit. That's a fun time. So what I want to get to is let me stop this awful artwork and get to what I really want to talk about is House of the Dragon. I know not everybody here has probably been watching the show. I don't know who all is keeping up. Let me put you. I don't know why, man. Like, I don't understand. I'm trying to put you on full screen, and yet these buttons don't even. There we go. Get you on there, man. Let me get that. The World of Ice and Fire. Now, Matthew, you were showing this to me before we went on air. And I love books like this that have artwork, that have pictures maybe from the show sometimes. I love the vintage and like the burned paper around the edges look. explain to everybody what this is.
Dang it.
That's the first time. That's the first time. Punk, if you're watching, Punk, first time. Say it right now. First time that Matthew has dropped the phone during a stream. And ladies and gentlemen, he is not wearing socks. And that is a sexy man. So, yeah, baby. All right. I'm glad I got it. I'm going to clip that shit and I'm going to make a short out of it. How beautiful. And don't even worry about it. That's great. That's fun. All right. So, yes, tell us. Hang on real quick. Look at those ankles. Sweet OF fans, OF content, baby. Yeah.
Oh, wait, hey, no.
3-star says it's time to take a shot. Yeah, baby. Oh, that got your attention, 3-star, as you work on your pictures and your stuff. All right. So tell us about the book, Matthew, real quick. And then I want to get into the show just a little bit as we round turn number 4, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great book. It's like an encyclopedia. It goes through like the history of Westeros, but mostly the Targaryen influence.
Which is what the House of the Dragon is about. Okay.
But it also goes through like the North and the people of the North. And each passage is like a piece of an encyclopedia. So this is a book that you would find in a library that you would open up and it would have the histories of Westeros in it or something like that. And each passage is written by a different character in the story. And so they are either maesters of the Citadel or a different maester or somebody who was in the tower, or, you know, they're different people from the realm. So they all have their political agenda. So they're writing from a specific perspective. And for the most part, if a maester is writing it, they hate the Targaryens. And so they paint them in the worst light possible. And then you have other people that are more middle of the road, and you have some Targaryen sycophants that are writing passages. But it goes through the Wall. It goes through the Night's Watch and the Long Night and all the major battles and all the major histories that lead up to A Song of Ice and Fire. And so part of that is it goes through the reign of all the Targaryen kings of Westeros. And it tells you about their story, their childhood, their rise, their downfall, or their passing of the torch, or however the realm moved on after they passed and how they passed from that person's perspective. And so it's got a lot of insights here, there, and all over the place, but they're inconsistent narrators. So you can't trust them as presenting facts. You have to trust them to present their agenda loosely based on the facts. And so this gives showrunners creative liberty to do different things as they build the show, so that they don't have to stick strictly to it, but roughly to it. And that's great. That's what I prefer about my visual adaptations versus my written adaptations, is that they make those leaps. They make those fudging of the lines type of thing. And that's why I can appreciate, movies that some people don't. And it's like, I understand what they were trying to do and they got the basis of the story right, but they didn't get a lot of the details right. That happens because you have 2 hours to tell something that was 3,000 pages or however long the book is. And there's so much more detail in the book for reasons, right? You look at the Harry Potter novels. Those movies are really good and the books are better, right? Because they've got more detail in them. It's the same kind of idea.
And that's basically with any book that's been adapted to film, right? I mean, you always have your book readers, you have your film people. Your TV watchers and your book people. And that could be Game of Thrones, it could be Harry Potter, which there is a series being worked on right now, Harry Potter series, that, may very well go into more of that detail because of the fact that it's a series rather than a movie. They have maybe 8 hours, or they have how many ever hours of television to hammer that stuff out. We may get some more lore. We may get some more of those details that you're talking about. But a book like that, I really love because, whether you read the original works or whether you want something that is condensed, or whether you want it all brought together with artwork and stuff like that, which I really appreciate. It's a great story to get into. I'd love to read the actual books. What scares me is that they're never going to be finished.
Yeah.
And therefore you hate to invest
Yeah.
so much time into something that the author himself has just in no way seemed to want to finish his
I bought
writings.
all the books after I watched season 1 on the HBO show, and I read them all and got involved with that, listened to all the lore, and the first 4 seasons of that Game of Thrones show is phenomenal. Season 5 is okay, season 6 is meh, season 7 and 8 are terrible.
It takes a big nosedive. They have the problem a lot of shows do. You don't have a concept of time because they don't explain it, and therefore things start happening quickly, and there's no reference to how much time these things are taking, and all of a sudden everything seems rushed and doesn't make sense. And I think those of us that watch Game of Thrones know kind of how that ended, right? And a lot of people were not happy. They weren't happy with the way those stories ended. I know that there's a story that War Chest wanted to tell that may not have ended well for him, about a girl named Pop Pop and the World of Ice and Fire with a scooter rental and a wild trip to Bali. But I'll let him get into that one night when I have him on. Yeah, any girl named Pop Pop, that's, look, hello, it's in my name, I gotta love any girl named Pop Pop. Now, Eric Thurman says he's never seen Game of Thrones. Now, I highly recommend you watch it. I do highly recommend you watch it to the end. I do think you'll be invested. However, this show, when it was announced with several other spinoff shows, House of the Dragon, but this show specifically features the Targaryens, and
dragons. Everybody wanted the dragons.
Yes, and so we've got plenty of dragons. We have great drama. It is what made Game of Thrones the first few seasons great was the political drama. It's not necessarily the battles, although there are great battles. It is the conversations. It is the writing, is the political intrigue.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you, the first season, while some think it's a little slow,
no,
for the most part, I think it was widely recommended, widely loved by most everyone that watched it, because we were so worried about it being like those last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And holy moly, in a sea of shitty shows, we got a gem in season 1, specifically centered around King Viserys, who is one of the most wonderful kings and people you could probably have on the throne. And unfortunately, as we all know, with the Game of Thrones world and Westeros, that really comes back to bite him in the end.
Yeah, I mean, so far, House of the Dragon has been amazing, and they are going into the lore, and they're going into the lore in places that Dan and Dave wouldn't go. They didn't want to go. So they touched it as little as they possibly could, and they took some liberties with some things, but they didn't even dive into some of the stuff. So House of the Dragon is doing a better job of creating the world of Ice and Fire than even the Game of Thrones show did. But as far as watching Game of Thrones, I can't recommend it to anybody anymore. I say watch it to season 6 and stop.
Sure.
I would say even so much as to watch to season 4, because that's where the books end, and stop there, because everything beyond that was not in a book. And so they were going off of supposition or potential storylines.
And George R.R. Martin, from what we've been told and understand, also, was consulting on the show. Now, the writers said that he had told them how it's supposed to end. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything if it's not on paper, but
so
he told them.
He didn't tell them.
See, I had read that they said they know how it ends because George actually told them.
Okay, so they know how it's supposed to end. Well, no. So he put up an equation and said, if you can solve this equation, you can write my show. And is it R plus H equals J or something like that?
Yes, and that's what's written on the yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so once they figured out
Figured out
that,
John's yeah. Okay.
yeah, once they figured out that, because it was never written or explicitly stated anywhere, he said, "Okay, you can write my show because you know enough about the lore."
Okay.
And then he helped them with all the other things. And I don't know for a fact that they know exactly how he was going to end it. I severely doubt it because that last season makes no sense whatsoever. But I can see how the very ending of what happens in the capital of Westeros is the way it's going to be. Now, what happens to Jon Snow, I think, is a travesty in that show.
Yes.
And how they got there doesn't make any sense because they need another 2 seasons to show that happening.
Well, unfortunately, they split the last 2 seasons. They split they split it into 2 seasons, basically shortened seasons, and then we
Yeah, and
rushed
they
everywhere to
did
get.
it because Disney offered them a lot of money to come write a Star Wars film, and they
Yes.
said, and HBO offered them all the money in the world to take as long as they want to finish this, and
Right.
they said, "Oh no, we're going to do it in 2 seasons, and this is how we're going to do it."
Right.
And so they did their thing so they could go over and make Star Wars. But the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones failed so miserably. Star Wars says, "No."
Well, and we know Kathleen Kennedy has fired more directors than she hired at this
Yep.
point in Star Wars. So for
Yep.
Lucasfilm, but getting to House of the Dragon, just to lay it out there. I highly recommended. Go watch season 1. I kind of don't want to really spoil any of the major plot points. I will say, ultimately, at the end of the day, you have a king whose wife passes away, and then he names his daughter as the heir to the kingdom, which does not sit well, as you can imagine. And so what you ultimately have is you have him take on a new wife, and his hand, the hand of the king, it's his daughter. The hand of the king is basically the right hand man to the king. He advises him on many things as well as the counsel that he has, but the hand is very influential for a king, especially when they really don't care about paying attention to a lot of things going on, and they just want to get briefed and whatever. And the hand can be a very influential person. So, nonetheless, the hand to the king sees to it and basically makes it happen. That the king marries his daughter, and then to bear children, so that those boys, if a boy is born, can actually be the heir. And then in his dying days, he holds steadfast that it's his daughter. However, there is a mistake made near the end of the season, and a something that happens that is taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
Through prophecy. Speaking of prophecy, a story that the king told his children often,
Yep.
Targaryen king told his children about Aegon the Conqueror, who was a
And
great king.
only his children. He only
Only his
ever
children.
told
Yes.
this story to his children.
Yes. And that's a very important thing because as the war that has begun is based off of a misunderstanding
Yep.
about what this king truly wanted. And also, as well as I do, Matthew, you've seen it in real life. Someone's that with a loved one in their dying moments, and they say something or they don't say something, or that person's the only person there.
Yep.
And so they can say whatever they want to say. They
Yep.
can make something up, and so there's a misunderstanding, and really season 1 has such wonderful acting. It is one of the most emotional scenes for me personally as a father that I've
Yeah.
ever watched in my life.
Yeah.
As an old man trying to walk by himself
You
across a
will
floor
never
to
be
a throne.
you will never be more riveted and gripped in emotion and paying attention to the scene of an old man walking across a room than you will in the way that they filmed, they shot, they acted, they presented everything in this scene. There's the subtleties, the acting, the emotion that's tied up in this man walking across a room to go sit on the throne is a very intense experience. And
Yes.
it's I mean, that scene alone should have had this show up for a whole bunch of
It
awards.
it absolutely should have, and it's really amazing that it didn't. That scene alone was worthy of several awards. And I can't. I'm not gonna sell it. I'm not gonna sell it short. Like it really was. And when I think about being a dad, and I think about what this person wanted for his family, he just wants everybody to get along.
Yeah.
And then that particular scene, and again, he's reiterating his plans. He's reiterating what he said all along. He's never changed. He's never wavered. It's always been the same.
Yep.
And then near the end of his very end of his life, it's misunderstood,
Yeah.
something that he is sick and says, and that really kicks off a war that basically ultimately will put all dragons in small cages or diminish their superiority for many years, many hundreds of years to come, until we get to Game of Thrones, and especially at the end, once those eggs hatch and become, large dragons.
Well, I mean, we're only really 2 generations away from.
Yeah, I guess, 2. Well, yeah, 2 generations.
Well, I
I guess, right?
I mean, yeah, because the old people in A Song of Ice and Fire are very young or just being born right now in House of the Dragon.
Yes, yeah, that's true. And there are some other spinoffs being planned, but we'll stick to this one for right now. So season 2 really, just so you know, the king who ended up passing away has a sister who was passed over, and then he has a brother, and the brother is a volatile brother, and really wants power, very much so. He ends up marrying his cousin, right? Or his cousin, right? Or niece.
Which one's his brother?
Rhaenyra and
No,
Daemon. Viserys. Yeah, Daemon's brother is Viserys.
Oh yeah. He marries
Viserys' daughter.
His niece.
His niece. He marries his niece.
Yeah.
And now you again, now this is not, it's fictional, but in those days, this was not unusual.
Well, I mean,
you had a lot of inbreeding. You had a lot of familial marriages, and marriages just for royalty, for favor, for territory.
If you go back to French royalty, they would marry brothers and sisters sometimes, like the Targaryens did.
Yes, brother and sister, right? So nonetheless, so you have these very interesting characters, Daemon, his brother. So after the king has passed, Daemon and his daughter Rhaenyra marry. And then basically they are run out of King's Landing because Alicent Hightower, the daughter of the Hand to the King Otto Hightower, who is now the Hand to King Aegon, who is the second, Aegon the second. He is the King Viserys' youngest son, and he is told on his deathbed, he tells his wife, Viserys tells his wife on the deathbed, he mentions the prophecy, and she mistakes it as the name of her son, their son, as he wants him to be the king, not his daughter. And so you have this young man on the throne. He doesn't really want it in season 1. In season 2, he starts to take hold and realize his power. And we get some really interesting scenes between him and his hand, who was his father's hand. And he no longer really wants to follow his father's footsteps. He wants to forge his own path at this point. He wants war at this point. So you have 2 queens who now used to be best friends. They're now on opposite sides because one is supposed to be the queen, the queen and the ruler on the Iron Throne per her father. However, the other queen, who was Viserys' wife, heard him in his dying breath, and they promoted her son, their son, to the throne. And so you have 2 warring factions, the Blacks and the Greens. Both sides have dragons. Both sides have Targaryen blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of intrigue. There's so many
There's a
characters.
lot. There's a lot in there. It's so hard to try.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat, a lot of stuff to get into. But Alicent and Rhaenyra were extremely close when they were in the castle together. They shared a lot of time together. Friendship, raising children, all of these things.
Yes.
And you get Viserys' sister who's passed up, and she is, she's married to the sea snake, right? So she's married to a Valerian.
Very powerful, a master of the seas.
Yeah.
Large fleet.
And they go running off to their castle to kind of figure out how things are going, because she's all upset about stuff. But they had several moments where this could have ended with one fiery explosion, and it would have been over. And it didn't happen because people were too compassionate about family members, or they didn't want to, burn the realm down, or they weren't sure how things were going to play.
There's still respect.
There's still
respect between the houses and how to approach this difference in philosophy, or who should be on the Iron Throne.
Well, and there's also hesitation, right? I mean, is this the right decision? People still have these things back in their mind, because some of them still want to be good people. Most of them are power hungry maniacs, megalomaniacs. Yeah. And ultimately, if you want to break this story down, this is about two women fighting over power, and it is a large reason for the basis moving forward in A Song of Ice and Fire as to why most of the people in the realm believe that women should not be on the throne. Women should not be ruling because of what happens in this war.
Yes.
And how each one of them loses control over their subordinates or their other relatives that do things out of turn or inappropriately, not exactly the way that they had asked for it to be done or commanded that it be done, right?
It really, sets in motion as well moving forward, that this war really encompasses so many houses that already don't like each other, right? In the most recent episode, we see a flashback or just a little bit before of two
Hatfields
boys,
and McCoys.
Basically, yes, the Brackens and the Blackwoods, and there it's two different houses that don't care for each other anyway, and you have two young men who are kind of going at it like two teenagers would. They say, we claim for this queen, or we claim for this king, and this is who we follow. And they're, at first it's kind of, you think it's just kind of joking around, then it's serious. And then flash forward literally 2 seconds later, and you see one of them has been stabbed and he's laying on the ground face down in a pit of mud. And you can pan out, there's been this gigantic battle, which I wish we had seen, because there's much more to it that also affects things in the future as well. But
because
it's okay.
These families hold the largest armies in all of Westeros. These two families, between the two of them, have the largest armies in all of Westeros, and they just battled and they lost a lot of people in this. I want to rewind back to season 1 for just a second.
Sure.
and go back to a divide started happening between the blacks and the greens when a confrontation happened and one of the boys lost an eye. Aemon with an A, lost an eye. And there was no retribution done, because they're like, no, we just need to smooth this over with the family. We're just going to calm it all down. And so there was no retribution taken for that. And that stemmed a lot of the animosity and the division between the two as it went on. And at the very end of the season, Daemon Targaryen killed one of the sons of the Greens. I forget his name, but he was on his dragon. They were both on their dragons, and the dragons just went at it. And Daemon's dragon just took out the other dragon by chomping the boy in half.
Conhuesos, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you, man. And War Chest says we're just talking about dragon Sonic cheese conies, pop, and some guy just lost an eye. It's you know what? That's actually a good way to sum it up. The thing of it is with a show like this, you know, I guess you'd probably agree with me. Unless if you've got people that are watching episode to episode, right? They're caught up, they're episode to episode, and you're saying, hey, you know what? We're going to go through episode 3. We're going to go through episode 4. You know, it is a lot to take in. I find it a fascinating story for someone who has not read the books. Okay. I loved Game of Thrones, but if you out there, you know, watching this on replay, whatever, you stuck with us this long, or you've tuned in right now, if you loved Game of Thrones and you love that first 5 seasons, then you're going to love this show, because this show brings back so much of what made that show great, which is what I said at the first time, or the beginning, is that the political intrigue, the acting, the dialogue, you know, the writing is so good. And in a sea of shows that we just can't stand, that we have such a hard time getting through 1 or 2 episodes, I just find it refreshing that that it's just, you know, that it's this good, and it's this good considering what we've gotten, and it has 2 strong female leads. Right? It has other female characters that are featured. It has representation. It has diversity. It has all of these things.
Well, and we can go back and talk about that for a second too, because they changed the skin tone dramatically of one of the pivotal characters moving forward to even Aegon the Third. And they made him a black man, and everybody kind of poo-pooed on that and said, but he's supposed to be pale skinned with purple eyes.
It's gonna be the same old thing. Here we go.
And
right?
so we were all gonna, you know, poo-poo it, say,
Absolutely.
oh, they're just going down this thing. And then everybody loved it, and they said, oh, he's that character now. That's just who he is. Okay, we're gonna move forward. And nobody had an issue with it, because the story was good, because the acting was good, because it all went well together. And when you make those changes, if you don't have a story to back it up, if you don't have the writing and the acting chops to back it up, it's going to fall apart. And then you're going to feel like, I was just hired for the color of my skin, and that's not a good way to feel. This guy was hired because of his acting ability and what he brought, and he brought it, and he continues to bring it. And so, you know, nobody bats an eye about that going forward. And this, like I said, like you were saying, it's just so well done. It's refreshing to finally have something that's good to watch on TV. I'm excited to come watch it on Sunday nights.
Right. I mean, and the fact, like, look, you know, we're 3 episodes in, and I know if you looked it up online, if you try to look at anything, and yes, Jay Gonzo, everybody loves some beaver, by the way. I had to wear it at least one time. So, and for those of you that maybe are listening on replay or just whatever, I'm watching I'm wearing a Buc-ee's beaver costume that I wore to the Joe Fest last weekend. Was it last weekend? Wasn't it? Yeah, the weekend before. Whatever. It's been a weekend and a half. Whatever. Whatever. So yes, it's a Buc-ee's beaver costume, and I love it. So anyway, but yes, you know, 3 episodes into season 2. No, there has not been any major battle action. We've seen some somewhat small, exhilarating pieces with one of Rhaenyra's daughters who is on a dragon patrolling, and you have some Kingsguard from the other side that are out on, you know, not even patrol really, but they're trying to.
They're on a mission.
They're on a mission, but they're trying to make it into the forest before they get burned alive, and it's a race to the forest line. That's, you know, an exhilarating scene to an extent, but right now it's all set up. It's set up, and that's what made Game of Thrones so good, was the setup. And so so far so good. I assume they want to take this show out to at least 3 seasons. I can't see where 4 would make a lot of sense, knowing where the story goes.
Well,
but we'll see.
So they have the Dunk and Egg series in the works, and while we have seen Egg already as a babe, and I think we've seen Duncan too, that we know that this will happen along the way. Do we want to give a quick recap of those first 2 episodes, or what do we want to do with
I mean, you know, we can, if you'd like to kind of just, give a quick rundown of, episode 1, episode 2 if you want. I can
Sure.
pull it up and if you want, and just even kind of just touch on the basis from what you remember.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
episode 1 is again more setup. It's the idea that the last episode or the last season ended with the death of Rhaenyra's son, and she is in mourning. She doesn't know what to do. She does, but she's processing everything. And so the men are ruling things in her stead, and so they're making all these plans. The whole incident happened because Daemon was upset about Aemon and other things, and took things into his own hands and went too far. And this too far was really too far. And so now both women, to a degree, are trying to pull the dragons back, because once you unleash the dragons just shouldn't be fighting dragons. It's going to be
full on, and it's going to be the destruction of everything.
yes,
and the
so
dragons.
neither side wants that to happen, but at the same time, these tensions and these things are building. And Rhaenyra comes back, and she basically says, "A son for a son." And so Daemon sets all this up, and he goes over to Westeros, sneaks into the keep, finds a King's Guardsman who is loyal still, and they work their way in, and they find the rat catcher.
The rat catchers, by the way, are employed by the king to catch the rats in the castle. That's what they do. They know all the back alleys. They know all the special ways into the castle. They know all the secret passages and how to get up and down the floors and all that. So, yes, you are. Go ahead, man. I just wanted to explain that.
Yeah. And then you get what the people who follow the Song of Ice and Fire and all of lore know as the Blood and Cheese incident. Okay, so you have the Red Wedding. You've got all these different names for things. This is called Blood and Cheese, and it's because you partner one of the King's Guardsmen with the rat catcher with the express orders to murder Aemon Targaryen, the guy with one eye, the guy we talked about before.
And right? Aemon is the one whose dragon killed Jace, the youngest son of Rhaenyra. Okay, Aemon he got upset, and then his dragon lost control, and he killed Jace, who was on a peacekeeping mission, just a mission to just seek out help from the realm. And Aemon has a very large dragon, and so that's the end of season 1. So now just to set up so we know that kind of where we're at right now. Okay.
Yeah, and so she says, Aemon Targaryen is the one we want to kill. Go kill a son for a son. So they took my son. I'm going to take their son. Go kill him. And so Blood and Cheese were like, well, what if we can't find Aemon? And then it kind of cuts away. So Daemon obviously gave orders, or didn't. We don't know if he actually said, well, then kill another son. We don't know that that's what was said, because it cuts away. But they go through, sneaking through the castle, pretending to be rat catchers, going through, and then they find Aegon's boy and girl in the TV show. So the books are different, and the queen, and they hold a knife to the queen's throat, and they say, which one's the boy? And she points, and they go to get it, and they say, no, wait, she's lying. And the other one says, no, I think she's telling the truth. And so they kill the one that she's pointed to, and it was the son. And so they killed her son,
the would-be heir to the throne.
Yeah, the would-be heir to the throne. Now I do want to go over in the books, because in the books it was a little different. Both of them were boys, and they were slightly older. And when they held the knife to the queen's throat, she picked one, and they killed the other. And then they cut his head off, and then they went to the one that was still alive, and they whispered in his ear, your mother chose you to die, and walked out. Now, I think that's a little more impactful.
That's way more impactful in the book than it is.
And in terms of the conflict internally and externally between what's going on here. But I believe they did it for a reason. They still killed the heir. And I believe that storyline between the division between that boy and his family is going to be transferred to Aemon and his family. as they go forward, but we'll get there. Aemon Targaryen, the one-eyed guy, is running around, and he's hitting the brothels and sleeping with this one particular lady of the night, which was his first lady of the night, and he's always been connected with her, so he keeps going back. And he's down with the people as he hides through there and everything. But the next episode kind of comes in, and I forget exactly how it sets up, but basically it comes to the fact that Aegon decided, well, we found a leak, so we're going to kill all the rat catchers. And so he strings up and murders all the rat catchers, and to send a message. This is happening at the same time as they're trying to plan a funeral for his son. And they don't want the king to be present because he's too emotional. So the queen will be present, and she doesn't want to be, but she's like, you have to show the sign that, you know, and the king's mother, you have to show grief to the people. And they go through this whole thing, and they get this respect and love for the small folk because their son died, and they see it, and he lost his head, and everybody's looking good. And then the king goes and kills all the rat catchers. And now all the small folk are like, fuck you guys. You guys suck. You just killed us for no reason.
Yes, because they had a funeral procession for his son, and they got the small folk in the kingdom on their side, as well as probably other people from the realm, because they blamed this on Rhaenyra, who is the queen, the Targaryen queen, who is the rightful heir to the throne in her eyes and should be. And so she's on the Dragonstone on the island. And so the small folk start to sympathize with the king and his queen because of their son died, and it's blamed on Queen Rhaenyra, who is the enemy. And it's supposed that she's the one that ordered this hit and would take a little boy and have him killed in his bed.
Yep.
And so so there were having the funeral procession. They get the small folk on their side. However, when they torture the rat catchers and try to figure out who it was that did it, they're able to find one guy who is a Kingsguard, but when he gave up the other guy, no one would admit who it was. So they took all the rat catchers in the king's employ, and they hung them and strung them up around the castle.
So it was they were grilling all of the guardsmen to find out what happened, and then one of them broke and then said it was a rat catcher, that he wasn't sure which rat catcher, and so they killed all the rat catchers.
Right. And so by doing that, you took all the sympathy that you had gained from the small folk over the death of the boy after they paraded him through the streets, put his head back on and sewed it on. They took the queen and the queen dowager, who is the mother of the queen and used to be the queen, in a carriage behind them. They do this funeral, or they're in a carriage in front rather, and they do a funeral procession. So they have the sympathy. Now her boy king has gone crazy and decided, you know what, we're going to string them all up, since no one will admit to it. No one will admit who the accomplice is. And now you lose the sympathy of the small folk.
Right. And to also further set this up, you have some small council meetings where the king is very flippant and demanding. And you see, if you know Joffrey from Game of Thrones, you'll see some tendencies that he has when he brings his son in there to the council meeting, and he's messing with a Lannister. It's Tywin Lannister's father, who Tywin Lannister never had much love for. And he's starting to make a fool of Lannister. And then the Queen Dowager stops him, and they get on with their meeting. And so you see this kind of mean streak, this kind of out there kind of streak, but he's still controlled by his mother. So his mother still has some control over him at this point. But his Hightower, the Queen Dowager's father, right, who was the hand of the king before, is the current king's hand, is trying to, advise him properly about restraint. And they have a meeting with a bunch of the small folk, and, we took all of your sheep, we're just going to give those back. And he's like, you can't do that. The dragons need the food. you can't just do that because then everybody's going to ask for that. And it was like, well, I mean, it's just one guy. And then it's like, on second thought, we'll change our mind. So the hand is trying to shape this young man into a good young man, a leader who understands the cost and benefit of each interaction that he has in this harsh world. But at a point in the next episode, I believe, he gets some advice from somebody who is walking around and kind of whispering in his ear and doing this little thing here and there, and finally gets rid of that hand and appoints what's his name? Sir
Criston Cole, who is the
Criston
leader. He is the leader of the King's Guard, which is supposed to be sworn to chastity. Yet Criston Cole is having an affair with the king's mother, which is the Queen Dowager, former queen. And yet he feels
has
bad.
been doing this for a long time. Hence, some of their children have his hair color.
Have his hair. That is correct. So again, and there's so much here with all these different characters that come to play, and you know, with episode 2, as the king starts to exhibit these tendencies, you can see he's getting agitated. He's wanting to take command of the kingship, and his mother, you know, he doesn't want to follow exactly what his mother's saying. He doesn't want to follow what the hand is saying, which was the previous hand to his father.
And you see him hanging out a lot with his king's guards and drinking and hanging out on the throne.
Young men who are his friends. They're actually his friends. He promoted to King's Guard, and
they're all yes men.
Yes, they're all
they
just
will agree
kids. They're really just kids.
Yeah.
They're all just teenagers.
Yeah.
And so so he's been pulled and pushed and prodded in all these different directions, and then finally his Sir Criston Cole, the leader of the King's Guard, decides that they're going to retaliate, and he decides to send one of his soldiers, one of the King's Guard, to Dragonstone to murder Queen Rhaenyra, the enemy, since they blame her for murdering the son of the king. So he sends him on a covert mission, and he has a twin. So it's 2 twins, one with one side, one with the other. And the plan is this twin can infiltrate Dragonstone and pose as his twin and get very close to the queen and then kill her. And this plan pleases the king. He thinks it's a great plan. And the hand tries to advise him how idiotic it is, and that he does not thinking these things through.
Yeah, well, and also Criston Cole is doing this out of this weird ego, trying to protect himself, because this guy is probably one of the only other people that knows what he's been doing with the Queen Dowager. Correct. And to protect his honor and to impugn this other man's honor, he says, you'll do this because I'm going to tell you to do it, and you're going to follow your orders because I'm telling them to you. And then the king also agrees with this order once he's presented with that information. And so they send him off, but there's a dual purpose there. It's a guilt that he's trying to pass on to somebody else. And then once he's dead, he feels like his guilt will die with that person.
Yes. And so, you know, the plan goes awry. Obviously, I say obviously the plan goes awry. It does get foiled. Both twins end up dying. They both end up fighting each other, and tragically.
And so it's really kind of interesting, that battle too, because you know, the one twin that's there stops the other twin from committing the murder, but they get engaged in this battle and nobody can tell who's who because they're wearing the same outfits.
Classic. Yep. I loved it though, but it's a classic trope when you have dealing with twins.
Yep.
It's a classic trope, but I did enjoy it.
And then once one of them dies, the other one says he's sorry and commits suicide because he knows you'll never really know which one of us died. And so I have to die also to prove that this threat is no longer a threat, that you don't have to worry about me. You don't have to worry about him. It's over. So he was the one that was loyal to the blacks. but he committed suicide, one, because his brother died, and two, because he knows that there would always be supposition.
Yes, it's and 3 stars says and we've already seen it with that awful Hound Mountain fight. Look, I was not a fan
That
of that.
no,
But I thought this was at least, from a stakes perspective, I thought was maybe, more entertaining.
yeah,
Everybody had been waiting on that Hound and Mountain fight for years and years, and when it finally happened,
it was
considering this,
disappointing.
yeah, and the state of the show at that time,
Yeah,
it was only going to be disappointing. But
yeah,
I think they did, a good job here. Obviously, like I said, both twins die, one from one house, one from the other, one supporting one queen or king, one supporting the
yeah.
other the queen, and so the queen is saved. Her husband, Damon, Prince Damon, flies off to basically take over a castle, the largest castle in Harrenhal. And when he gets there, it's in disrepair. There's no one there. There's no soldiers, and he needs to recruit an army. That's what he's there for.
Yep.
And he has a vision at a weirwood tree, and a young lady walks up from behind him and tells him he's going to die there. Now we don't really know a lot. In his vision, he's walking and he looks at a young Rhaenyra who, if you watched last season, the characters originally were young women. They eventually they switched places with older women, older actresses, but this is the younger version of his now wife.
Well, the woman that he fell in love with.
Yeah, the woman he fell in love with, and she's holding the little prince that was killed in the last episode, that was beheaded, and at his behest. Now, I don't think ultimately that that's what they really wanted, but at the same time, he's the one that gave the orders for them, the rat catchers, to infiltrate and to do what they did. So he's having this dream sequence, and then he's at the weirwood tree, and then the young lady behind him says, "You will die here." Now personally, I don't know where that's at yet. I do know what happens moving forward, but considering the show is deviating a little bit, we'll see where that goes.
Well, and you also have to take into account the history, the lore of Harrenhal. So Aegon the Conqueror took his dragon and he nuked that castle. Yes. And ever since he nuked that castle has always been in disrepair. And it's been a cursed castle, a haunted castle, a castle whose ever the lord that holds it usually dies a gruesome death of some kind. There's not a happy ending for whoever is in control of this castle. And when Daemon comes there, he's expecting a fight. He lands his dragon on top and he comes down and he's expecting troops or resistance or whatever. But Sir Strong is sitting there eating dinner and he's like, "Welcome. We secede. The castle is yours, sir. Come have dinner with us." And he's like, "Wait, what? I'm going to get poisoned food here. What the heck's going on?" And so there's this whole back and forth, but he's like, "Hey, I mean, I don't care. If you don't care, take over the castle. It's fine. We support you guys."
Right. Yeah. It's there's really nothing to take. And so now he needs to raise an army. And so really this episode, we find him, he's there, trying to figure out what to do, try to raise an army. He has his vision. Meanwhile, their battles have already begun, right? We have a battle with the House Bracken.
Yep.
Yeah, and
I did kind of want to touch on the peasant woman who is the information gatherer.
So there's a master of whispers on both sides. And she is now probably Rhaenyra's master of whispers.
After all this, right? So she worked for, she gave information to Hightower to do what he did, and then she's been back and forth. She was brought onto Dragonstone and was kept prisoner, but she had information. She didn't really serve either side. She just had information, and people asked, and she gave it because she's a small folk. She's just going to get murdered either way. And
Right.
so she meets with the queen, and basically they hash it out. And she's like, "You want to leave? Okay, leave. You can leave," which is unusual. But she gave them information about the greens that they were going to use. Let her go. She sees the twin passing by and she changes her mind. She goes back to help warn them, and that's how they stop the assassination of Queen Rhaenyra, is with her information. And so then later on, we find out that she comes back and she's like, "Why did you come back? You let me go." That showed compassion. So I know that you have compassion, and I don't believe that this Hightower woman, because she's related to Hightower, she hates the Hightowers, that you have compassion and they don't. So I'll serve you, but I want to
Right.
be on your council. I want to be whispering in your ear. And so she kind of works her way from being a peasant to now being on the council of Queen Rhaenyra.
Yes, and moving forward could be a very dangerous thing. We'll, you know, we
Yes.
don't know how that's going to play out, but someone that is able to work their way in is a very dangerous person when you go from being a prisoner to being on the council
Yeah.
with the queen that quickly,
Yep.
just through the divulgence of information.
Yep.
And so, so basically, we get, you know, like I said, the battle that kind of begins the next episode shows us that things are in full swing. Now, there were two houses that already hated each other for many years, and so it didn't take much for them to go to war or to fight with each other. But unfortunately, what we don't see in that battle is Aemon actually riding his dragon. And that's where we get the burning mill, which is the name of the episode, because everything gets burned. So we miss that. So assume that they're going to move that to another battle, and show him actually going out, because in episode 3 we see the king is getting ready to ride out on his dragon for war. His older brother says, you know, why don't you send me out? And the king is very much wanting to go out so he can show his stuff. He has on Valyrian steel armor, which was King Aegon's, the Conqueror, and very famous armor. Valyrian steel, very strong. And so he's getting fitted, and then his new master of whisperers
Well,
comes in.
not yet.
Well, well, no, okay, not yet. So go ahead then. Go ahead, because I'm going to pull this
Well,
up.
this is the guy that pulled him aside and said, he just throws things out there, right? He plays some niceties, sides with his ego, and then says things like, "Well, he was your father's hand," and then just leaves it at that. And so later on, when he appoints Sir Christian Cole as his hand and the head of the Kingsguard, and boots out Hightower, it was because of that statement. It's like, don't you want to be your own man? Basically, is what he's saying. So he's
Correct.
throwing these little tidbits here and there, and so he pulls him aside in this conversation when he's wearing this nice fancy armor, and he's getting ready to ride out there, and he says, "Oh, very good, sir, very good." And then he lays out these two options. It's like, so while you're away, all of these people are going to be making all the war decisions for you. Or, it's great that you want to go out there and do all this stuff and everybody's praising you, but all these people are going to be making these decisions while you're gone, and just leaves it at that. And
basically what he says is he decides, he uses the old, hey, while you're out flying and fighting, your mother and her father, your hand, are going to try to lead the council and make decisions
former
in
hand.
your stead. Yes. Well, yes, former hand. They're going to try to make decisions in your stead. So they're going to try to control everything while you're gone out riding your dragon. So he puts the little bug in his ear and it's enough for him to actually change his mind.
Mm-hmm. And everybody agrees with him. Oh, yes, sir. I think that's a prudent idea.
Yes. Yes.
And then he stops the guy as he's leaving and says, you know what? I have a need for a master of whisperers. Boom, you're it.
His name is Larry's. And
Larry. His name is Larry.
Larry's. Yeah, Laris has a club foot.
Yep.
And his family doesn't even think much of him, but he's been able to weasel his way into the court, in the kingdom, as people like this, as we've shown, somehow find a way to do.
And you have to remember that George R.R. Martin has a special place in his heart for dwarves, cripples, and bastards.
Yes. Yes, he does. And we've seen all of them have horrible, horrible fates to some degree. Or some good, as in Tyrion. But nonetheless, so Larys has whispered this into his ear. And you're right, 3-star, we had Varys, now we have Larys. It's kind of funny. But yes,
history rhymes.
Yep, and Larys whispers this in his ear, so the king decides he's not going to ride out at this point. And so, but they're still going to send out this mission to go scout, but they're also really, basically, they wanted to get houses on their side as well. And so you've kind of got like a recon type mission, but you need to get support, especially after the king hung all the rat catchers and turned the small folk against them. So they had sympathy. Now that, the small folk are not real happy with the crown. So they need to rally people to their side.
Meanwhile, Queen Rhaenyra is trying to protect her family line, and sends all the rest of the children and one of the other girls with them to my God, think of her name, the Vale. They're going to send them to the Vale, with the eggs that they have left, and this is to preserve the family line if all should go wrong here. But the young woman has no interest in going and leaving her sister and leaving everything else, but she reluctantly goes.
Yes, she does. Now, she takes 4 dragon eggs with her because these are basically the future. And she sends all of her children off, actually. She sends all the children off from Dragonstone because Dragonstone is not that far away from the Red Keep, for one. A couple days, maybe a day or two.
It's on the other side of the bay.
Yeah, it's really not far. So technically, if a couple dragons came, they weren't prepared, or if things went down, then they could all be killed. So she sends her children off to go, stay elsewhere. And one of the girls she sends with the 4 dragon eggs. And those 4 dragon eggs, 3 of those are 3 of the ones that Daenerys gets in Game of Thrones as a gift. Season 2,
season 1 for her.
Season 1, season 1. That's right. And so we have a little bit of a tying together of the 2 series right there. Mm-hmm. We see the eggs go off. Now one's red, one's gold, one's green, one's blue. Now
black or blue.
Yeah, when we see them later on, they've been they're all black, right? They have the different turn to stone.
Well, no, they still have some color to them.
Okay, I thought they'd all been turned to stone from what I'd read.
Well, they speculate that because they don't think that they're viable eggs.
Right.
But they still have their color because that's why they're valuable.
Yes. Right? And we remember the scene, obviously, where she burns down everything, and then the egg. Yeah, that was great. All right. So anyway, but nonetheless, so she's preparing for war. She's preparing for sending her kids off, but she has one last plan, and she talks to her little whisperer girl, and advises her about what would she do. Now she's also gotten counsel from her aunt about, do you really want to go to war, you know what's going to happen. Men
Right.
are the ones that always want to go to war. Maybe we can change this as women. We can change this. We can do something different. So Queen Rhaenyra hatches a plan to sneak to the Red Keep, and have a talk with Queen Alicent, the Queen Dowager, the mother of the king, who they used to be best friends, very good friends. And this is where I kind of had a little bit of issue with the episode, because we had a little bit of a speed up portion. Okay, there you go.
I just want to show this real quick. War Chest mentioned he's never seen a game board map. And this book has all the maps of the different regions. So this is the one of the north. But you can see that there's land surrounding it, and then you can go to another page that's got other maps. So this book actually has the layout and the maps of all the different territories from Dorne to all the places in Westeros. There's the Iron Islands where the Sneestake is ruling at this point. So it's got all of this incredible detail in this Frazetta-like artwork through the whole book. It's really, really cool. There's the Westerlands, and so you've got all these different places there. So if you want a good map series, it's there's in this book right here.
I do like the fact of having references, right? I mean, it's not like some Google map here. It's more like, hey, if you were sailing, this is what the shit would look like, if you're writing it by hand. I'm cool with that. I do like that. And if you're really into the show, you're really into the books or whatever, having a frame of reference for how far away this is. You can read it many times, but you forget some things. And so being able to reference that is super cool. And yes, so like you said, sending her children away, is a very difficult move, but at the same time, it's a smart thing to do considering where we're at. So she has one plan to try to execute. She sneaks to King's Landing, and she sneaks in as one of the Sisters of the Seven, which is a religious group. And she's wearing basically a nun's costume. And she goes there with her, I guess, basically her new Lord Commander. Or her Lord Commander rather, and so he's protecting her, but he sits outside on the steps. She knows there's one place where Queen Alicent goes to, and it's to pray and to light a candle, and in the Septon, right, or where the High Septon and all the it's like the church basically. So, you end up with a scene where the two queens end up together, sitting side by side. Both of them have lit a candle. Both are praying. And this is where I had a little bit of an issue, because her face is completely uncovered and she's out in the open talking with the queen.
Now, okay, so they kind of went over this before, right? Unless you're dressed in the accoutrement, people do not recognize anyone, because faces are from paintings, right? They're not photographs. They don't know exactly what they look like. The small folk aren't going to know who these people actually are. So if they see the white hair and the fancy outfit, then they're going to say, that's a Targaryen. Which Targaryen is it? I think it's this one, right? So she was in The Hobbit, so she couldn't show any of her hair. So it was just her face. And she kept her head down most of the time, right? So she was hiding herself. But as soon as she sits down, the Queen Dowager pulls a knife.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, who the hell is this that's sitting down next to me?
Yeah, which so it's kind of a last ditch effort to say, hey, look, neither one of us want this. My aunt Rhaenys told me that before I left King's Landing, everything was going down, that you really didn't want war. You didn't want bloodshed. This will destroy the realm. And so I don't want it either. Right. And so you have this really good conversation. I mean, I like the scene.
It's fascinating about this conversation because they're going back, and Alicent is firm in her belief, and Rhaenys is firm in her belief. And they start having this conversation, and Rhaenys starts questioning herself. She really, truly believes this. She believes that he changed his mind on his deathbed, up and to the point that she mentions the Song of Ice and Fire. And as soon as she mentions Aegon and the Song of Ice and Fire, she's like, wait, he told you about that? He, knowing the fact that he only ever told his children about the Song of Ice and Fire, he was clearly thinking that he was talking to Rhaenys.
Yes.
Or Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra. His daughter, who he had wanted on the Iron Throne the entire time.
And so now Alicent's like, oh, wait, maybe there is some confusion. And she says, no, that's what he said. So she knows in the back of her mind, she's questioning it, but she's putting on the front of it saying, no, that's what he said. And now Rhaenyra is more convinced than ever that she is
been
rightful.
A mistake, and she's the rightful heir to the throne. This has all been a mistake. This is what at the time the king's wife, her friend, heard on his deathbed, but it was actually, he was just referencing prophecy, and so now we get the Queen Alicent, who now knows in the back of her mind, oh my God, this is all because of a mistake. It's something my very sick husband was whispering on his deathbed. And now you have Queen Rhaenyra, who thinks beyond the shadow of a doubt it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And that, this story only told, down to Targaryens and his children, rather, of this tale. So that's kind of where we're at as we end episode 3. Is the Queen Dowager, Queen Alicent. She storms off, and she does not turn in Rhaenyra, even though she is behind enemy lines. She does not turn her in. She doesn't call the guards. She actually allows her to be able to make her way out wherever she's going.
She even warns her, you need to leave now.
Yes.
A couple of times. And then once they finish their conversation, she walks off, and then she goes off, and she doesn't warn anybody. So she lets her go.
Yep. And that's kind of where we finish up. I think things are going to start ramping up. And so some of that action that so many people are wanting, I think we're going to get moving forward. But I personally am a fan of the intrigue and the conversations. And then when we get battles, we get meaningful battles, we get meaningful action. And I'm hoping that's where we're at. I love the show. I know that, without us going over each episode and setting everything up, you got a lot to cover. There's a lot of names, a lot of lore, a lot of relationships. There's a lot of stuff to really cover and go through. And so, trying to fit that all in, it is difficult, but really, for anybody out there, if you've watched Game of Thrones in particular, I say go back, watch season 1 of House of the Dragon, get through the episodes, start this season, get through those episodes, and then come Sunday, we'll get episode 4.
Yep.
And I do think it's a really great show, and I'm just hoping to, as we get more spinoff shows, that they put as much into those as they have been able to put into this one so far.
3-star, you're not necessarily wrong. I think that a lot of people are siding with the blacks on this. The Greens do seem like they're kind of usurping the throne. The Hightowers had always had high designs, and there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot. And there's even other characters we weren't able to get into. But at the same time, I also know that what time it is, and we went way, 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 way over what we normally would. And that's what's difficult about these things. You get to talking, and it is what it is.
It's a lot of fun.
No 3-star. We're not going to talk about the Acolyte. We decided last week that until a good Star Wars show comes along, I just don't know that there's anything to talk about. We've even watched where we started to talk about it, and I even watched the numbers just disintegrate on people watching. And I know that happened a little bit with House of the Dragon, but I also know it's kind of late.
I believe that I will want to talk about Andor season 2 when it comes out. I believe there's going to be a little something to talk about. I don't know how interested other people are going to be in it, because I like the first season. I think it flows well. And
I love the first season.
I think this is going to be the last season, because I think they're going to tie it right into Rogue One.
Yes.
And honestly, after watching the first season, I wanted to watch Rogue One again right away. Because it goes together nicely.
And War Chest says, I don't have bedtime. I even had a bowl of Fruit Loops for dinner. No rules in this house. You know what? And voice to text does suck when you're driving. I have to use it all the time. And yeah.
And I will say to War Chest also, the intro to Game of Thrones, like the TV series, was an entire map of Westeros, and the entire whatever focus was on that episode, it went over that part of the map. And so when they were in Dorne, they went from Dorne all the way up to the Red
Yeah.
Keep. So I mean, they went over. There was a map. There was always a map.
And War Chest also, yeah. I actually really enjoyed Andor. I did think it was well written. I thought it was
Yeah.
a good show. And yes, is it a slow burn, as so many people call it? Yes, but like I've watched a lot of things over my lifetime that were a slow burn. I've watched
Yeah.
a lot of movies that were, definitely a not a ton of action. Yeah, okay, it's Star Wars, but I really thought they did a great job with it. I
Yeah.
thought that every actor in that show did a really good job. I also love the scenes at the prison.
Yep.
Andy Serkis, I thought he was wonderful.
He nailed it, man.
I mean,
Yeah.
and his character and just, and everything that was going on, I thought was really good. I can't wait for season 2. The Acolyte is just, I probably watched the first 15 minutes of it before I jumped on stream.
It's so
And
hard to
man,
watch.
it is, I mean, I'm again talking to the screen, yelling to the screen. I'm so, how stupid is this? This makes no sense. It is just unbelievable. And so yeah, man. Listen, I definitely want to get you out of here so you can get to bed. I know you got an early morning and I have to work tomorrow evening, so I don't have the same schedule you do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you stuck with me this long, at least to go over House of the Dragon and try to at least break down some of it for those that are still watching. And for those that will catch up, yeah, man, really, thank you. And for everybody that was chatting and dropped by, and for those of you maybe watching on replay, throw a comment, man. If there's anything that tickles your fancy, anything that you heard you didn't like, that you did like or whatever, throw a comment. And if you liked it, throw me a like, throw us a like on this stream. It definitely helps. And obviously we'll be back next Tuesday, and there'll be a new episode of House of the Dragon, and hopefully then we can go over that episode and not have to rehash everything.
Yeah.
And that would be wonderful. And I'm off this Sunday, so I have nothing but time to watch it. But yeah, man. So Matthew, why don't you give everybody your Instagram and everything where they can find you before I get you out of here, man?
Yeah. I'm at Mamu's Action Figure blog. I post every single day. I've got a secondary account also that I post on sometimes, not as much, but I'm always posting every day. So, Saturdays are Snake Eye Saturdays and Savage Crucible Saturdays. Sundays are G.I. Joe. Wednesdays are G.I. Joe. Tuesdays are usually Turtles. Mondays are either Mythic Legions, Mezco, or Moon Knight. So, sometimes all three. And then like I said, others random stuff throughout the week. Sometimes X-Men, a lot of Batman stuff, whatever. But action figure photography, I like to do it. So I engage on that. And I posted some stuff from the convention I was at a while back. But yeah, that's where you'll find me. And then anybody who's coming to Punk's Pit on Friday, I'll be there.
Yeah, man. Friday night, that'll be a lot of fun on a Punk with Toys channel if you're a member. And there's been a lot of gift memberships given out the last couple times too, which is awesome, man. And I had forgotten I've been a member for 7 months, I think, on there, and so that was fun. The other night I had a good time tuning in last night, rather, and. But yeah, so I'm Pop Blender. You can find me every Tuesday night with Matthew Matson on The Big Show. You can find me every other Wednesday on Sevens Wild with 3-Star Draw, aka Down South 77. That is a G.I. Joe centric stream about news, old stuff, new stuff. We'll sneak in some other things, other IPs in there as well. And then every Friday I have a stream where I am Pop Blender Unfiltered. Occasionally we'll bring on a guest. This Friday, I'm going to have to figure out what time it is, and I will let y'all know that in the next couple days because I have a lot going on Friday. But yeah, man, that's about it. I do have an Instagram channel that I post on, but YouTube is the main way to find me. And until next time, man, I really appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you so much. Again, always fun to talk to you, and we'll chat later on, man. I'm gonna play us out of here. What do you say?
Alrighty.
Rock and roll, baby. See you guys.